following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and the Kwisatz Haderach.
Well, I don't like to really toot my own horn, but yes, I am here also.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm the one. Hi, I'm Steve.
This is podcast episode number 309, and we are back. It feels strange, like I had to get comfortable in my chair again because we haven't podcasted in like forever.
No, we have not.
We have not. This week, we are thrilled to be back chatting with you, and we're going to be discussing the first installment of the new Dune franchise, part one, which released in 2021. We are super excited. We're excited to be back talking to people too. Like it's good to be recording again. So that alone is
absolutely.
And
it's so weird. It's like a sense of deja vu here as we're going through this.
Hey, don't speak of it. We don't want to bring down the wrath of the whatever from the where.
You know what? It was a wonderful practice rehearsal. That's all I'm referring to it as.
Yeah, we had a great rehearsal for this. I was going to say too, it's nice to be back and talking about, content that we, enjoy. So, because
do you mean, D?
Yeah, because prior to our little break there for the holidays, long break for the holidays, we were, sadly talking about things we'd rather not talk about.
Yes.
But that's fine. That's done now. We stuck a fork in that, and now we're on to bigger and better things, like this movie. We will follow our usual format. So first off, let's discuss our quick thoughts when we finished off Fear. I went first the last podcast. So Steve, you go ahead. Let us know. What are your thoughts on the movie Dune?
On the movie Dune.
By Denis Villeneuve.
Blown away was the response, I think, that I used last time, and I'm going to use it again because I still believe that. This was like a COVID movie, if you remember. It kind of came out,
yes.
Right when in 2021, in at the end of the year when we were things were just starting to open up again and come back.
I recall seeing him in the movie theater with me and three of my closest, neighbors, and they were scattered all over the place.
They were scattered, masked, right? So people are trying to figure out popcorn and soda pop with a mask on, and
right.
But despite all that, this was still just a spectacle movie that was amazing to see in the theater. And then it moved very quickly, again, because of COVID, it moved to streaming and has, I think, lived on Max ever since.
Yes.
Which is great because it's allowed me to watch it, though, like 20 times since it came out, Yeah. But, excuse me. I really, really thought this movie is fantastic. I think it does an incredible job of being faithful to the original novel, and the look of it, the feel of it, the way that Villanueva directs and shepherds the story through is just incredible, and it's amazing. It's just it's so much. The original, the 84 David Lynch Dune is a great movie, but as we'll get into when we get there, it's not overall faithful to the book. I mean, it hits a lot of the main points, but there are some major differences, right?
Right.
And this story, at least so far, has been ultra faithful to the original text, and you don't see just maybe just a little things here or there, but not at all the kind of trailblazing that David Lynch did back in 1984. So yeah, I love this movie. This is probably my favorite movie of the last couple years. that has been released that we've seen. So yeah, I'm so excited for, what is basically this weekend is when part 2 is coming out in advanced screening. I've been getting emails saying, "Hey, we've got Dune in 70 millimeter. Are you coming?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to." So I'm super excited. So what about you? What'd you think?
Well, the 84 version has a really strong and soft place in my heart. When I was a kid, I may have told this story on the podcast before, but my parents are divorced, and when I would spend like every other weekend with my dad would do the whole like, okay, we'll go to the movies, and we would sort of rotate who got to choose like what movie. But my dad was a huge sci-fi buff, and he was going to go see Dune, and he was like, "You want to come with?" So nobody else was interested. And I was like, I like staying. So I went with, and first of all, as a 9-year-old, I'm impressed that I followed it and understood it as much, because it is even the Lynch version. It's still very dense. It's such a whole new world, and while it is sci-fi, there's so many like weird concepts to sort of grasp, like the navigators and all that stuff. So it was a lot for my 9-year-old brain, but I got it. And I just always associate that movie with my dad. And so it'll always have a big, big place in my heart. And I love it to pieces. And yes, I have seen the director's cut, and it, builds on that. But when this was announced, and I knew this was coming, first of all, I really enjoyed. I think I've only seen 2 other movies by Denis, but his vision and how he directs, I was like, oh, this guy. He's going to be great, because there's something, one that really hit me was Prisoners, and just the atmospheric feel of that movie was just amazing. And so going in, I was very excited, and it did not disappoint. Just visually stunning, faithful, builds upon the book. Like it just so well done on so many different levels, which we will of course get to when we get to our details. But just I was hanging with my nephew this weekend, and we were doing like a little, puzzle or something. And he said that, wow, that scratches all my itches in my head. Cause it was something very visual and whatever. It was kind of like a Rubik's Cube kind of style thing. And this, for what I would want in a Dune movie, this movie scratched all my itches. It was just stunning on so many levels. I really honestly can't, we'll get into our details, like I said, but off the top of my head, can't even really think about anything that's disappointing in any way. It's just wonderful. It was sumptuous. It was so deep in all of those new worlds that they create for you. It was just so detailed and gorgeous to look at, to see, to hear, to feel, to get that sense. And it just makes me I'm so excited for the next movie. I'm like ridiculously excited for that movie. So I loved it. I loved it some more. And we joked about this previously, that yes, it did park itself on HBO Max about 3 weeks to a month at the most after it was released in the theaters. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna watch it a million times while it's on HBO. Yep. Didn't watch it a single time until I needed to prep for the podcast.
Yes, that's right. I remember that.
It just goes to show, like, an embarrassment of riches if you've got it there in front of you. I mean, it was very comforting. I always knew it was there if I wanted to watch it. But then in prepping for the podcast, watched it at least 2.5, 3 times to get ready for this, and just it just was wonderful. It's so wonderful. I really hope that I have a chance to watch it one more time before we go and see it in the theater.
But I'm definitely gonna. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing that I think is adorable with the Max is that if you watch it when the credits are rolling at the end, it will then
you might
say,
be interested in.
Since you watch this movie, you might be interested, and it puts up the 1984 David Lynch tune. Like,
you
hey,
might be interested in this, and I'm like, it's possible.
I could.
It's entirely possible. I could be interested. But yes, love this movie. Can't say enough about it. As you will see when we get into the details, I could go on, and we will. So yeah, love it. Can't wait. Before we get into our points about the movie itself, let's just sort of, for people living under a rock, and if you do, hello, here's a brief description of the plot of the movie itself, if you want to go ahead and take care of that, Steve, and then we'll get into some more details about the movie itself.
All right. Well, again, we are reviewing Dune Part 1, and the description that we have is as follows. Paul Atreides, a brilliant and gifted young man born into a great destiny beyond his understanding, must travel to the most dangerous planet in the universe to ensure the future of his family and his people. As malevolent forces explode into conflict over the planet's exclusive supply of the most precious resource in existence, only those who can conquer their own fear will survive. And if that description doesn't tell you what this movie is all about, I don't know what to tell you, people.
That pretty much covers it all. Let's talk
without covering anything. It's great.
Right. It's everything and nothing all at once, which is amazing. Let's cover nuts and bolts before we get into details. Screenplay by John Spates is what we're going to go with.
I think that's what we decided. Yep.
Yes. Denis himself, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth wrote this screenplay.
Yes.
And
which, as we said last time, when you see multiple writers for a screenplay, it either means that the three of them got together and worked on it as a group, but it also, and this is more common, it means that one of them wrote the first draft and then the other one wrote the second draft, and then the director, in this case, wrote the final draft. You know, that as people were attached to projects and detached, you know, the script continued, and then the next guy comes in and goes, well, I'm going to change it because that's not what I want to do. And then, of course, when Denny got attached to it, he read the script and went, well, I want to, you know, that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to, so that it again, I'm not sure in this case, but that's usually what it means. I'm in my experience, when you see a whole bunch of people listed as, you know, writing the screenplay, normally that's what it means. That went through multiple revisions before, you know, we finally get to what they're shooting. So
right. And in this case, it didn't mean that at all, which was lovely.
I know.
Let's talk director. So
yes.
Denis Villeneuve, he's amazing. As I said in the beginning, he is he's highly talented, very visual oriented director. He's got such a great long list of things that he is known for. Most notably, I would say, I mean, I mentioned Prisoners. I think that's a wonderful movie if you haven't had a chance, but Sicario, Arrival, and of course, it was really sort of his delving into the reimagining of Blade Runner for Blade Runner 2049 that really sort of opened him up to this sort of sci-fi universe. And which, you know,
oh yeah, no,
can't blame people.
Yeah, no,
I mean if you're going to treat that material with the kind of respect that he did, and even build upon it, then you knew that this movie was in the right hands for sure.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Although for me, it would be Arrival and Sicario. Those were the two, which and Prisoners too. I mean, he's really made a lot of great movies, but those are the two big ones. You know, Sicario had kind of this. It had I got a real sense of the spectacle of, you know, it was this epic story, and it's not. I mean, it's a very, very small story, but with the, you know, the way he shot the desert sequences, in Sicario, when the team is going out and they're going through the tunnels and all that stuff. It just, you could tell it was almost like training ground for Dune, right?
Right.
It's kind of, this is where he kind of picked up some tricks on how to do this, so that when he was shooting Dune, he had that foundation.
Right.
And Arrival, it has that kind of sci-fi epic sense to it about, it's first contact, and it's how do you deal with it, and how do we deal with the the differences and all of that. And again, it's all stuff that he filed away that he could use when he made Dune. But again, and Blade Runner as well. Blade Runner also had that, the 2049 movie had that kind of spectacle and wonder that Ridley Scott created with the original. He was able to kind of rekindle it, but in a way that's a little bit different, but yet you still have the familiar, callbacks to the original. So yeah. Amazing director, no doubt.
Yeah, it one thing's for sure, and I shouldn't call myself a movie fan or a film buff in any way, but I haven't seen Sicario or Arrival, and I really should, because I really think Prisoners might be my only thing other than Dune that I've seen of his, which is shameful, honestly. But I always enjoy things that are recommended by others, and I haven't heard quite as many people talk about Arrival being great, but I have heard tons of people say Sicario is amazing. So maybe I'll just try one or the other or both. But I think
Sicario is great because one of the reasons is that it has Josh Brolin.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the main characters, so it's again a little bit of foreshadowing. Josh Brolin makes it into Dune, and Arrival has Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great cat. He's a lot of his projects. He's really, one of the things that I marvel at. He's really good at putting together good casts. And finding people to play roles, where you're like, oh, okay, that was a good choice, So
he's great at that. Let's talk to a little bit. Let's sort of dip our toe in. Dune has quite a history. Not just, obviously it has its roots in, novel form from Frank Herbert. And it's just another annual reminder that it's been far too long since I've read the book, and I really need to just jump back in and read the damn book. Read the damn book, Diana. Write it down on a piece of paper. Read the book.
It's a short read. It's only like 1,600 pages. Okay,
yeah,
come on.
It'll be fine. I can do that in like at least a week or month or 7. We'll see. So it has its roots there, but in the visual media, it has some pretty deep roots as well. Obviously, we already discussed the 84, but some more history there. Let's dive into some of that timeline of the history of Dune.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, like you said, Frank Herbert wrote the book, and again, I think it was released in the early 1960s.
That sounds about right.
Like 63, I think, is what comes to my head. But you have to really get into the early 1970s, and the work was optioned by this Polish filmmaker named Alejandro Jodorowsky, who had made a lot of movies in Europe, and he wanted to bring it to the big screen. And I think he did that in like 1974, and worked on pre-production for several years. And there's a documentary about this film out there that you can check out. There's a lot of information that has, a lot of things have been written about it, a lot of archive and sort of histories and so on. So if you're curious, you can go check it out. But again, the film never got made, but all of the stuff that they were planning to do is what is fascinating. And you can look and you can see like the people he wanted to cast. Like he wanted to cast Mick Jagger for this movie. Okay. Yeah. as I believe as Paul. All right. And Michael, Mick Jagger, he's like 80. I go, but in 1974, Mick Jagger was like 40. Okay. So, you know what I mean? He was a lot younger. But there's a weird kind of zombie, ghoul connection to all of this, in that one of the people that got hired to work on this movie was Dan O'Bannon. And we, of course, know and love Dan O'Bannon because he wrote and directed Return of the Living Dead in 1980, in the 1980s, which, it's one of our favorite zombie movies. It's an awesome horror comedy, all that stuff. And he went over to Spain, where they were in pre-production, and he was going to be a special effects, in charge of the special effects. And so he started working with some of the designers, guys like Ron Cobb, who, also amazing artists who did work on Blade Runner and Alien and other things, later on. And they were designing, they were doing all kinds of sort of artist views of everything that's going to be in the movie, the look of it, the vehicles, the equipment, the buildings, the wardrobe, all of that was being pre-production, designed and sort of conceptualized. And it was he got over there. He spent all his money to go over there thinking he had this job. And literally like a week or two after he got there, the European financing for the movie fell apart, and the movie shut down. And that was the end of the Jodorowsky Dune. And so Dan O'Bannon, basically scrimps and gets every penny he can to get a ticket back to the United States. So now he's back in the U.S. He has no money. He has no job, and he has really no prospects. And so he ends up crashing on a friend of his couch. And his friend's name is this guy named Ron Shusett. And they are both filmmakers. They're both writers. And, they're sort of like, Ron Shusett says, hey, you can crash my couch till you get back on your feet. And so while he's kind of scuffling around, they start talking about projects and ideas and things. And Dan O'Bannon goes, I got this script that I'm writing, but I'm stuck. I'm halfway through, and I don't know where it goes. And Ron Schuster's like, hey, that's really interesting. I just optioned the rights to a Philip K. Dick story called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and I want to develop it into a screenplay. And so they say, hey, I'll help you with yours if you help me with mine. And so they decide to tackle Dan O'Bannon's story first. And Ron Shusett is actually the guy who comes up with the solve. He's the one that came up with the idea that got the story moving again for Dan O'Bannon. And and the title of his screenplay that he was stuck on was called Star Beast. And so they finished it, and they ended up getting it sold, and it was made as a feature film in 1979 under the title of Alien. So Alien, the way we see it now, is a direct result of this Jodorowsky Dune movie falling apart. So that's very cool and crazy. And of course that got Dan O'Bannon going, which again, 4 years after that, he was picked to direct the Return of the Living Dead, which, as we said, is one of our favorite movies and a classic, obviously.
Absolutely.
And just to complete the story, Ron Schusett's book or film, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, ultimately became a film in the mid 1980s under the title of Total Recall. You might remember that movie. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So yeah, and then of course that was the Schwarzenegger vehicle. That was a huge hit when it came out as well. So anyway, that's kind of the backdrop of the first attempt. Then you move forward into the 1980s, and along comes David Lynch, and of course David Lynch at this point had done Eraserhead, and was sort of on the map as a weird filmmaker, I think is the best way to sum it up. He made a filmmaker who makes weird movies, and he decided he wanted to tackle Dune, so he got the rights to it, and this is a major studio picture, so he had the budget, he had the money. And he put together this amazing cast. Many of them are David Lynch players, people that he would either had already worked with or would start working with a lot afterwards. The top, foremost obviously is Kyle MacLachlan as Paul, but you've got Everett McGill, who is Twin Peaks. Stilgar. Yes, he says Stilgar, right? But I mean, the whole cast is amazing, and you know, Patrick Stewart, you know,
feeling awful.
What does he say? What did you say? He says, feeling awful women and little children or something.
Moods are for women. And,
yeah.
You know, moods are for love making, and I forget what the line is.
Yeah, it's so great, right? Yeah. But anyway, it is an amazing cast, and you've got, you know, Jose Ferrer is the Emperor. You know, you have, you know, obviously Stingle Dingle Dangle is Fayed Ratha, and you know, a young Virginia Madsen is Princess Aurelia, and so yeah, it's an amazing film in its own right. As we said, it's on HBO Max. You can watch it now. The thing about the '84 Dune, like I kind of said a little earlier, is that there's some trailblazing that goes on, and I think that, you know, David Lynch quite correctly realized that the whole story that is the Book of Dune is too big for a 2-hour movie.
Yes.
And so rather than try and cram it all in there, he kind of made some changes to make it a more, you know, something he could actually tell in the time length that he had. And like the big difference is that in the '84 Dune, the Emperor wants to get rid of the Atreides, not because he's just jealous that, you know, that the Duke is becoming popular and, you know, he's a good guy and the rest of the houses of the Landerstadt respect him and would probably follow him. It's in the movie, Lynch comes up with that the Atreides have come up with this new weapon. That's like the
weirding module. Yeah.
The weirding modules that are like a sonic weapon that you speak into it, and it takes the energy of your voice and turns it into an energy that can be destructive. And the idea is that if they can mass produce this, the Atreides troops will be invincible. Like even the dreaded Sardaukar won't be able to stand up against them. So the Emperor's like, well, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to team up with the Harkonnens, although in this movie they're the Harkonnens. And so they can wipe out the Atreides, and that will solve that problem. So again, big difference, right?
Yes.
Big difference. But again, I think, like I said correctly, it allows him to tell a pretty decent story in a, you know, feature length film that is not 6 hours long, you know. And I think if you watch the '84 Dune, he does a really good job of, he like picks out like the 6 or 7 major moments from the book and puts them in there. So they're in there, right? So Absolutely. You're like, oh yeah. And I know one of your points is that there are some direct, you know, like where both directors have taken, you know, word for word from the book, and the characters are saying stuff word for word, right? And you're like, oh my God, that's so cool, you know. But there's so many other differences too. You know, Richard Jordan plays Duncan Idaho in the David Lynch movie, and I mean, he's like a guy in the movie, and if you blink twice, you miss him, right? And the relationship between him and Paul is, I mean, not developed at all like it is in.
And it's really important. It's very important.
It's very important. And he's, you know, he's just like a guy who, like, you know, works for his dad. And when the attack starts, you know, Duncan's like, protect Paul. And then he gets killed and Paul goes, Duncan. And that's it. I mean, you know what I mean? You're just like, oh, and then
he gets a bullet to his head, and it's in slow motion because of the stupid shields. And you're like, oh, okay, well, he's gone.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just, you're like, huh, okay. But again, it's a really, really cool movie in its own right. And, you know, if you enjoyed the current Dune, and you get Max, you know, you should watch it if you've never seen it, because it's totally different. There are some things about it that are, I mean, the effects are not the greatest. The ornithopters are terrible. They're like boxes with like bat wings, and they're not goofy. Yeah. But I love the still suits from that movie.
Yes.
You know, I mean, they look like they do what they're supposed to do or what they claim to do, and the still suits in the new movie are cool, but they don't. I mean, it looks to me like they're just wearing a leather suit.
Yeah, in the in the 84 version and the Lynch version, they actually, it looks like a whole suit that's based around like one of those like backpacks that you can wear where you sip the water that have like, little channels in them. It actually looks a little bit like that. There's got like puckers and channels, and it looks like it's actually storing your
moisture.
water.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed
absolutely.
to. Yeah. You don't, you actually sort of visually see where the storage mechanism kind of is, as opposed to in this current movie, which it looks a little more sleek.
It does. Again, they look cool. They just don't look nearly as functional as the 84 ones do.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, but I mean, I think it's a real interesting, if you like the story, if you like the idea of Dune and Arrakis and that whole kind of space opera that Frank Herbert concocted, this is a cool version of it. It's not identical to what Herbert did, but it's still entertaining.
Yeah, agreed. So. And like I said, I have a soft spot for it, so it's
absolutely,
it'll always be there in my heart.
So. And it's kind of funny because having I saw it when it came out in the theater, which is weird because I hadn't been born yet, but I did see it, and I mean when that movie came out, it tanked.
It sure did.
A big time tank, and yet today, or I would say maybe about since like the aughts began, year 2000, 2001, 2002, something like that, a real strong kind of rabid fan base has evolved about that movie, that people are like, oh my God, it's very similar to the year previously. On the same weekend, Blade Runner and John Carpenter's The Thing were released, and both of those movies tanked at the box office and critically. And yet today, both of them are revered as classic, all-time great genre movies. And David Lynch's Dune isn't quite that high, but it's getting there.
It's close. I think it maintains such a special type of cult status, where it's like, this is going to sound terrible, but it's almost like up until this film, it sort of held a place of like, this isn't what we wanted, but it's the best we could get. For the people that are lovers of the books and the book series, this is probably the best we'll ever be able to get. You know what? It's pretty good. It's a solid B plus, and it had a life. It had a life and a following of people that have come to it over the years, like you were saying, and has had sort of like that long, slow resurgence of popularity. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was weird, this kind of like weird renaissance about it, and I can remember, in like the 90s when, if Dune would come up, everyone would just kind of turn up their nose like, oh, that movie's terrible, and then suddenly it was like, I don't know, I kind of liked it, and then more people were like, I really love that movie's great. And again, I think you're absolutely right, because it's the only it's the only picture, visual version of Dune that we had that was a feature film.
And like for me, like when I saw it, I was 9, so I loved it. And then later, there was no internet when we were that age. And it was like, then later you hear people are like, oh God, it just, it wasn't faithful to the what. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah, right.
You're like, I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. I had a hard time following some things, but I thought it was interesting and it was cool. And
yeah. And like my recollection of it is I had read the book when I was before the movie. I'd read the book when I was like 11 or 12, because Star Wars came out and then sci-fi was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And of course, my child brain exploded with sci-fi, and I became fascinated by it and was consuming. Like I read the Philip Dick Blade Runner story and didn't understand it at all, because it is a very adult story. Dealing about the soul and the purpose of life and all these things that I'm like, I want Han Solo to shoot people. That's what I'm thinking.
I want spacecraft and pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, right. And the same thing. I read Dune, and I know 100% I didn't get it. I didn't get it when I was 10. I enjoyed the action parts and and the sci-fi parts of folding space and all of that. I mean, that was cool, and the worms, I could visualize those, and they were cool. But the message about destiny and self-fulfillment and profit, I mean, no, 10-year-old me, no chance. And so, but when I saw the movie, since I didn't have all those high concepts of like what I thought the story was about, I loved it. I'm like, this is pretty cool,
Yeah, totally.
And then it was later when I would read the book, and of course I got to become more of a grown-ass man, that I started to see what Herbert was saying, and the book meant so much more to me. Like, oh my God, this is such an amazing story. And while I still like the Dune movie, I did start to go, man, it would have been great if he could have been a little more faithful to the text. And of course, that just was set up on a tee for this current movie, because, that was one of the reasons why I was blown away, because, oh my God, this is unbelievably faithful to the text,
Oh yeah.
So absolutely. So just to finish off the history, in 2000, so now we're getting a little closer. In 2000, the Sci-Fi Channel did a mini series directed by John Harrison, and I think it was 6 hours long, and I thought it was okay. I know a lot of people trashed it and didn't like it. I thought it was okay because, again, since they had 6 hours, they were able to incorporate a lot more of the book into their story than David Lynch could in 2 hours and 30 minutes or whatever the runtime is of the 84 Dune. So I give it points for that. The cast was notable. It had William Hurt in it as I believe he played the Duke. I think he played Leto. And so that was kind of cool. I like, William Hurt's was a really great actor. So that was nice. I liked that. It was a different performance and character than the Jürgen Prochnow Duke of the 84 version. And I'm sure it's available somewhere. You might have to buy an actual hard copy, like a DVD, if it's not streaming, but you should be able to get it. And it's not terrible. I think has some things that are better than the 84 movie in the way they realize things. And again, it's 16 years later, so they have 16 years of technical advances in special effects and computers and so on. So a lot of the effects are going to look better just because it's a more modern film. Okay. So anyway, that's the last one that's out there as well. And now that sets the stage, that we didn't know we needed, but we did for 2000. I know we did for 2021's Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. Again, before we get into some more of the details of the actual, scenes, lines, the meat and bones of the actual movie, I want to sort of talk just for, a short bit about some of the peripherals, like the things that I thought were absolutely spot on for me were the casting. I wouldn't change a single person. The art direction, which includes like the scenery, the locations, the costumes, just the look, the absolute overall look of the movie. The sound, I'll get into something specific in a second. Yeah, that. So just peripherally, the outside, the casting, the art direction, the sound. Like I said earlier, where I said I wouldn't change a thing. I don't think there's a thing that I could criticize. The only thing I would say is casting people that I love into roles where they were only on the screen for a very short period of time.
Yes.
I'm looking at you, Dave Despelja.
Dave Despelja, yeah, he's awesome, but oh my God, he's not in it much.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because I love him. He's great. He does great work in Danny's other movies, so it'd be great to have seen some more of him. But casting, obviously, art direction, the way you felt immersed in these three absolutely diametrically different homeworlds between Arrakis and Caladan and Gidi Prime. All three of these places are so unbelievably different from each other, and the way that all of those were captured all the way down to the tiniest details of costuming and props and set decoration to make everything stand out and make them different and separate from one another. Just visually astounding.
I would throw in too the homeworld of the Sardaukar as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Which there's only one scene there, and it's a Dave Dismalchian scene, which is awesome.
Yeah, you gotta write those down. There's only really like three.
Oh, there's like three.
They're meaty scenes, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, and what's great about the Sardaukar homeworld is that like it's like raining, right? And it's this kind of weird. You know, you don't even like see a building. It's just like all these guys, and they're like almost praying in the rain. And there's the sacrificial guy that's bleeding on this weird. I mean, it is a bizarre thing where you're like, what the heck is all this? But it's amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like church and brutal violence all like together in this feeling. And of course, because they have such a they speak in a different language and everything is subtitled for them, you just automatically are off, you feel off kilter when you're watching that one scene, because that they're so alien and different from the others around them, and just wonderfully done.
Well, what's great too is that they're talking in their language, and Dave as Peter is talking in just English like a regular thing. So he's conversing,
just understanding each other.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a great little scene. But anyway, you're right though. The four homeworlds that we see are all completely unique and different to each other, and it's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I really liked too about this art direction was, in Lynch's movie, we spend so much time on Arrakis, which we do in this movie as well. I just feel like a lot of the setup of Caladan was very like, here's a painting, here's a matte painting, and here we are inside the castle. Whereas they took the time in this version, Denis is outside. You're seeing the coastline. It's got such a, I don't want to assign a country to it, but it has a very like, Great Britain, the cliffs by the North Sea, and it just has that feeling to it, and I assume we'll be seeing much more of Gidi Prime in the next movie as well, but just even dipping your toe into that one, it's very futuristic and slick and kind of I don't know what's the word that would really describe that kind of.
My word, the word that comes to me is cold.
It's
very, first of all, it's hard colors. It's black and gray,
and there's nothing living. Like Caladan is like the direct opposite of both.
Right.
Gidi Prime and Arrakis. Arrakis, you don't see any real living things. They have to work really hard on it.
Just the palm trees.
Yeah. And Gidi Prime is like the absence of it. It's absolute, like, there's just nothing there.
And I think it goes a step further too. It's also like it's a lack of there's no sense of family. There's no sense of not to get fruity, but there's no sense of like love and companionship. It's just very barren and
cold, and there's no warmth there whatsoever.
And Caladan is totally different, like you said. It's green and vibrant, and there's there's the waves and the water, and the way that we see the Atreides interact with each other, you can tell that it's a family, and they love each other and respect each other, and you see the way that the Duke's men react to the Duke, and that this is a guy that they charge to the gates of hell for, whereas the Baron clearly rules by fear. You know what I mean? And murder, if he's killing people left and right all the time. You just know that, even though we might not see it in the movie, it's there of like it's very one-sided, right? Once your usefulness is over, you're over. So
and a lot of that that loyalty that Leto engenders and this family atmosphere that he creates, even amongst the people that are part of his staff, you have the sense that all these folks hold a special place in their hearts and in their minds. it's important for later. It's important for how things pan out, because if there wasn't that feeling, would Paul have been treated the way that he was? Would Paul and Jessica have been given that, that little bit extra, that little bit more protection, more help, more assistance, in the times they needed it? So he doesn't know it at the time, but he's creating this extra family that he's going to need, and he needs it, and he uses it for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing I wanted to touch on too, real quick, that's also sort of a peripheral thing, was the sound. And I absolutely loved the use of sound. There was, lots of stuff that like got right to the heart, whether it's actual sound effects, practical sound effects, the thumping of the actual putting out of the thumpers, but the even the beating of the wings and the ornithopters and things like that, like those were very, percussive, and they sort of got into your soul. But then the music that was chosen as well was so haunting and everything. And just as a quick sort of connection is here in Chicago, there was, I worked at the Goodman Theater for a very brief period of time, but when I started, the Goodman did a version of King Lear that, wasn't, universally loved, but I absolutely loved that version, as did the Rolling Stones for other reasons.
The Rolling Stones loved it.
They sure did. So there's a great scene that there was a piece of music that was used that just was so like, it was so keening and haunting. And it was a death scene. It was there's a scene where it shows like a mass grave, etc. And I knew someone who was on staff like years down the road. It was like, oh yeah, I worked on that show, like I was on crew or whatever. And I was like, there was a song that was used when they were doing the mass grave and yada yada. I was like, do you know it? And he sent it to me. And the inspiration, it's this song that's called, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but it's called Pilence P, and it is done by the Bulgarian women's choir, but it's just so haunting. So it's like that just gives you a taste of it. I don't want to go on and on and on, but that goes on, that type of music for a full scene in a Shakespeare play, and it just it hit my heart in such a way. It was just so amazing, the emotionality of it. And then when the first couple of beats of music that played in Dune that sort of share like some of the common threads, that same sort of keening and wailing women, and just sort of that high pitched, it's not exactly the same, but to me it evoked the same sort of feeling that I felt in that scene when I was watching that version of Lear. So for me, it just that alone, it just sucked me right in. I was like, oh yeah, this music is great. And and it did all the things I wanted it to. It sounds it sounds foreign, but also kind of familiar. And it's also because, when the moments it feels foreign, it puts you off kilter, because you're like, these are a people that I don't know and I don't know anything about, and we're learning about them. And this moment also has a lot of, whenever it was used, it's like this moment has a lot of fear and, trepidation. But also there were moments of like beauty and discovery, etc. So it was interesting to see it layered in such a beautiful way. The music about that was used in this film was just incredible. Loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And you're right that you can hear the similarity between that piece you just played a little bit of and the music from the movie. And I mean, the sound design of this movie just in general is so incredible.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it sweeps you right into it, into the kind of the space opera that this story is.
Yes.
And and just touching on the music, the thing that I everything you said, I agree with that. There are parts that feel very different and weird and off-putting, off-kilter, I think is the word you use. But
Yeah.
the thing that comes to mind for me is a lot of it, while it is not this, it sounds like religious music.
Right.
And since, there's a lot of religious concept flowing through this movie, in terms of people waiting for the Messiah to show up. I mean, there's like 3 different groups in this movie that are waiting for their Messiah to show up, right? And so I think that it does a really great job of reminding us of that when, Paul runs into someone for the first time and they're like, holy crap, is this kid the one? I don't know. He looks awful young to me. Right. I mean, that's a line in the movie, but he'll see a group of people on Arrakis, or he'll see, one of the Bene Gesserit, or he'll see, whoever, and you'll hear that kind of eerie music that has kind of like a song you'd hear in church. And it reminds you of the movie, the audience, that, oh yeah, that's right. There's this whole subtext going on of, is he this kind of supreme being that everyone's waiting for, And so I really like that. And I totally agree with you that the piece of music from Lear, certainly if he didn't hear that and, say, yeah, that's what I want. It's an eerie coincidence because they're very similar.
Yeah, agreed. I also wanted to take a second before we get into the nuts and bolts of our points of the movie and the scenes that we loved the most. I want to make sure that we cover the fact that I think that one of the things that sets this movie apart from the Lynch movie is the difference between the internal voice and the external voice. And there's a very specific scene that does that for me. Here's my example. So in the Lynch movie, they have exactly the same scene that happens in this movie, where Dr. Kynes is, getting them fitted in their still suits before they are going to go out and check out the Harvester. The scene follows almost exactly the same way in this movie, in the Denis movie, but in the Lynch movie, he's assisting Paul, and they have the same moment where he says, your suit is done desert fashion. Who told you to do it that way? And he's, almost angry. And he's like, how did you know? And he's like, they say the same thing. Like, it just seemed like the right way.
Yeah.
And in the Lynch movie, he has an internal thought, which nobody hears. And Dr. Kynes just looks at him, and in his head, you can hear him thinking, he will know your ways as if born to them, which is part of the prophecy. And he has this moment, and he just looks at him, and only he is able to have that moment. Now, in the Denis version, same scene, same thing happens. Dr. Kynes, played wonderfully, by, I cannot remember the actor's name, but she was wonderful.
Sharon Duncan Brewster.
Thank you, sir.
I looked it up because I agree. She was amazing.
She was great.
And I'm like, who is that again? So.
Yeah, I wish we could get more of her. Another one that, like, great casting, great role. We won't see you anymore.
Maybe in flashbacks, you never know.
We'll see. But no more of her because she's in the belly of a worm right now.
That's true.
So she does the same thing. Goes to adjust by his neck and make sure, it's you have it desert fashion. Who told you? And he's like, I don't, just seem like the right thing to do. She says out loud in the Fremen language exactly the same thing. He will know your ways as if born to them. But she says it in her own language, thinking that no one will know. Now, in this scene, it plays differently because everyone who's there knows that she had a reaction to Paul, that she had some type of reaction. Now, they have been studying the Fremen language, so they know some of it. And you have to assume, at least for me personally, you have to assume that Paul, being the scholar and getting himself very prepped for his time on Arrakis, he's the one that's really done a lot of, like, delving into school books and texts and manuals and all of that about Arrakis and all of the people. I think Paul understood at least some of what she said. If he didn't understand everything she said, he understood some of it. And that scene just plays differently. But one of the things, and you can go into what the director intended, et cetera, or whatever. But to me, I feel like one of those big things that's a difference between Lynch's and Denis' movie is that a lot of the stuff that happens in the Lynch version, a lot of dialogue happens in people's heads. There's so many moments where Paul is thinking things and wondering about things. Gurney seems extra angry today is all internalized. And so those moments still happen in this movie, but everything is said out loud. Or if it's not said, if there's a moment where they decide to not use that internal voice, it's fine because the scene explains itself. That's another example of it, is in that moment where Gurney is angry and he fights with him and he does the whole, moods of all, lovers and women and blah, blah, blah. And he's like,
I thought it was like chained pets and women. It's so funny the way Patrick Stewart plays that line. It's so great.
Yeah. And so he gets all angry about it. And, Paul has his, Gurney is so it's all internalized.
Yeah. Is he trying to kill me?
What is happening here? But in this, what Paul is feeling in this. He doesn't say those lines in his head in this scene.
Right.
Because he doesn't need to, because it's a little bit extra. It's almost like, I felt a lot of times like the Lynch, someone talking in their head was exposition. It was a way to take thoughts that are on a page in a book and making it part of a movie.
Yes.
I'm not going to say dialogue, but the dialogue's going to be there. And I felt like Denis trusted in the scene and the moment more than Lynch did. He knows, I don't need to force feed it to you in a way.
Right.
You will understand this scene no matter what, based on the direction I've given my actors and based on the actual action that happens. You're going to get it. It'll be obvious, And when you think about it, did you need to know that Paul said those words when Kyle MacLachlan says those in his head? Probably not. It was pretty obvious what was happening in that scene, but it would sort of give you this little extra layer, but I don't think you needed it. And I think that's one of the clean and neat things that Denis did with this film that really sets it apart from Lynch's, is that he trusted his audience a little bit more than I think Lynch did. And I think, I think he already knew that he was kind of approved to do 2 movies in advance. Yeah. He's like, I'm doing 2 movies. And it's up to you whether or not you're going to greenlight number 2. But I'm going to do this as 2 movies.
Well, and okay, first of all, you do know that it's actually 3 movies, right?
Well, he told them in advance. He's like, I'm going to do 2.
Yeah, but I mean, they're good. They're already filming Dune Part 3, so. So yeah, the movie that opens in a week is not going to end the story. So it's only like The Empire Strikes Back of Dune.
Well, that's fine with me. I'll take it.
I know, me too. But you're right. You're right, and I think that had a lot to do with him trusting the action and the actors to carry the scene, because he didn't have to rush as much as David Lynch did. Lynch, like I said, Lynch had 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah, and so he just had to like you said. It's much easier to get across a point to the audience by hitting them over the head by having a character say a thought that is not dialogue, that is not anything to be reacted upon. It's just, Paul Atreides, when Gurney is, training him and is really, coming at him hard, Paul has this kind of thought of, is he the traitor? Is he someone who's going to try and kill me? What's going on, right? And yeah, you're right. And in the newer film, Paul doesn't have to say that. It's all there, and the scene plays out, and you're like, oh, okay, and you're right. So, but and I do think that the fact that Denis knew or hoped that he would have another film, so he didn't have to just cut, get to the action, move through. We got a story to tell in 2 hours. We can't sit around with the little details. Here he could, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, It's great. It's really great. And there's also they had the little addition of the Paul and Jessica little sign language thing, which I thought was great. And she teaches it also to her staff, like her staff and her guards.
Yeah, her guards.
Yeah. So which is great. It's very helpful later on. It helps them, obviously communicate without others knowing that they're communicating.
Yeah.
So it was a nice little addition. I liked that. Because again, like the scene where they're they're being taken out into the desert after the attack, there's a lot of that scene in the Lynch version that happens in their heads. It's words spoken in their brains. And a lot more of it is said out loud. I mean, not technically out loud because she's signing it to him, but it's a lot of the same intention and moments are happening, but there's no dialogue said out loud in any way. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
And by the way, I would point out that in the scene when she picks a house matron and she picks Shout Out Mapes.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we see the sign language.
Yeah.
And she signals to her guard that, this one's got a weapon.
Yep.
Right. Her entire guard are women.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, and I think that's amazing.
I do
that's
too.
A really nice attention to detail for her.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. That of course, absolutely, and so that was. Yeah. So let's get into it.
Yeah. Now that we've been talking an hour, let's actually talk about the movie. I want to, one of my first notes I made was a humorous one, and it's just a line, and I love that line. Smile, Gurney. I am smiling.
Smiling.
And I think it was good because I think including that line and having that moment really and it's fairly early in the film, it really makes you aware that Denis made sure that there were moments of humor to sort of balance. And part of it also gives you a peek into what we were saying, this sort of surrogate family that Duke Leto has set up, and Gurney is a big part of that. So having that moment happen, was just very indicative of says everything you need to know about this family makeup, this staff makeup, the staff that is like family to them, and all of that. So it's a great little line that says more than it does on the page. So I just love it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It does. It allows the audience to laugh, so you're not all at 11 for drama and action. That's kind of those little valleys that you kind of need to kind of catch your breath.
Gotta have them.
And also, like you said, you get the sense that the Duke, he his staff, his immediate staff that he is associating with in the strategy meetings and everything, you get the sense that he knows all of their first names and knows their situation. Are they married? Do they have kids? All those kind of personal things. And is you get the sense that obviously Gurney doesn't, but if any of these people did have family, he would be like, so how's little Timmy?
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't and it wouldn't be that kind of fake platitude way of someone handed you a card that said don't forget to ask about their kid. It's like a genuine I'm interested, tell me what's going on.
Exactly.
And again, all that does is foster this intense loyalty that these guys and gals that are working for him, they're not doing it because they're getting paid to do it, they're doing it because they want to do it.
Yeah, it's like a duty, like a calling almost. Yeah. He said duty.
He said duty. That's so funny. Anyway, you totally get that sense. And it's like you said, it's one tiny little line.
Yeah.
But it just lets you know right there, right at the beginning, right when the agent of the change is coming and all this, spectacle and ceremony is happening. And actually, we even get one before that because Paul and Jessica are having breakfast and Jessica tells Paul he needs to get dressed up because of the ceremony, and he's like, "Why are we doing that?" And she goes, "Ceremony." And it's just kind of a funny little line that kind of gives you, okay, all right, I get it, and so it's great. And there's a couple other moments too that I'm sure we'll touch on where a funny line comes out in some moments where you're like, wow, this is a pretty tense moment, and someone's cracking wise,
Yeah, exactly. lots of moments happen all the way up until then, but to me, the first big, huge, like tentpole moment is Paul's test, and it's
what's in the box.
Yeah, it's a very different what's in the box moment. It's funny because I actually just watched Seven a couple of weeks ago.
What's in the box?
All the way through for the first time in ages, and
really?
It's funny. It was on like last night, the night before, on like one of them, TNT, TBS, one of those ones. And I'm like, how do you show this movie at all?
Yes.
On like regular cable. I don't get it.
I mean, because it's not just down.
Yeah, it's not just like you're editing out the cuss words. I mean, it was literally a man ate himself to death. How do you show that? Or the autopsy, whatever. Anyway,
or
yes,
the guy who like had to cut a pound of flesh off of his body, and
yeah,
you're right. There's some gruesome stuff in that movie. There's no doubt.
How do you do it?
What's in the box?
So yeah, different what's in the box moment. It's a heady scene. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of it's an amazing exchange of power, and there's a lot of realization that happens for Paul at the moment. And I think for me, I love how Geraldine Chaplin plays the Reverend Mother in this movie, and it's great because she was supposed to play Jessica in the Jodorowsky version. So,
are you sure you don't mean Charlotte Rampling?
Charlotte Rampling. I'm sorry. I had the wrong name in my brain. I was looking something up before, and I had the wrong name. But yes, Charlotte Rampling.
I'm going like, wait a minute, I'm having a stroke.
Yeah. So the woman who plays the Reverend Mother in Denis' version was set to play Jessica, Lady Jessica.
At the very least, she was like the wish list choice of Jodorowsky. Yeah.
So it's amazing because she was definitely destined to play a Bene Gesserit either way.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. She's going down that path. But I think the big difference between the two films, I love the way it's played here. She doesn't cry out. She doesn't move an inch. She doesn't. And I love the way her face is covered. It's very, she's not giving anything away. No emotion, no nothing. Even if her face wasn't covered, I don't think she would anyway. But she should be secretive and she should be hidden, I guess is what it would be. And I love the only time you see her flinch, move, do any kind of movement whatsoever is once Paul has sort of mastered. He's let the pain, as his mom said, it's flowing through him. It's passing through him. He's watching it pass through him, and he's gained power over that pain. And when he realizes he's there, he's sort of hit that plateau where he's like, I'm there. I've mastered it. At this strength, I've mastered it. And he looks up and he looks her in the eye. And there's the tiniest, the smidgeniest of smidgen flinches with her. She sees him for what he is and what he is going to become, or
what he could be.
Correct. The potential. She sees the potential there for what he could be if everything goes the way it should. And in the Lynch version, obviously, we remember, the moment where the Reverend Mother, the pain, it speaks out and whatever, but that doesn't happen in this movie. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's not true. I'm saying this one's better.
This one's better. Yes, you're
this
totally
one's better. Less is more. And she would never show emotion of any kind to anybody on any level. That's not who she is. So for her, just that teeny tiny flinch shows how strong Paul is, how much potential for even more strength. Like he's just barely tapped the surface of where his strength can go. And in that flash, she sees it and it scares the shit out of her.
Oh, it does.
And she just very minutely, there's just a tiny little flinch there and you barely see it. You've got to really be looking. And that is some freaking killer acting between the two of them. And it's a very, very important scene, not just for Paul to survive the box, but for the Reverend Mother to have seen what she sees. It's just amazing. All told, just an amazing scene.
Oh yeah. You get the sense that the Reverend Mother is going there, and going into before the test, she is convinced that there is not a chance in the universe that this kid is the one.
Yeah, I mean, look at him when you meet him. He's he's this scrawny, skinny, there's not a lot to him. They do a good job in the casting in this movie because he looks a lot, Timothée Chalamet in real life is older, but he looks young, a lot younger. He plays very young. He's very, waifish, as it were.
Yeah, and much closer looking, in the book, Paul Atreides is like 13.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just fun fact, Kyle MacLachlan was like 27 when he made the Dune movie in 1984, and he looks like a grown ass man. He's like 10 years younger than Jürgen Prochnow. You know what I mean? It's just like, really? But so they do it. And the same thing, Sting is, Sting looks like a grown ass man, not like a teenager like Fayed Ratha is supposed to be. But again, it's a little bit of stunt casting with Sting, obviously, and it's Lynch picked a guy in MacLachlan that he was comfortable with, that he's like, this, he can do it. And so, but you're right, Chalamet does look much more like the characters described in the book. So the Reverend Mother shows up, and like it's almost like a formality that like, all right, I'm gonna go do this test for this kid. He's gonna fail and he's gonna die, and that's gonna be the end of this little problem. Because as she points out to Jessica was under very specific instructions: don't sire a dude. And she so loved the Duke, who all the Duke wanted was a boy to take over the reins when he's gone, right? Pass on the lineage, that she broke the rules and did it. Right. And so the Reverend Mother's like, I'm going to nip this little problem in the bud because there's not a chance in heck that this kid is the one that we've been, the supreme being that we've been working for thousands of years. And boy, does her, life worldview change during that test. Because like you said, when she gives that look to him, it's like clearly her whole worldview has been shattered. And she's now going, oh, wait, this kid could be the one. Uh-oh, and that, of course, opens up a whole new can of worms because, as she says, they're literally going into the lion's den like tomorrow. And they're going to Arrakis where they're going to be completely exposed. And, what did she say? Well, the Duke, there's no chance, but we'll do what we can for you and your son.
Yeah.
Right. And so I mean, so she has, it's like almost like she exchanges one problem with another in that, first she thought, I'm just going to, I have to do this thing. It's taking out of my precious time to go here, conduct this test, and this kid's going to fail because there's no way. And now it's suddenly, holy crap, this kid could be the one. And now we have all this other shit that's going down. How do we protect him? And it's a wonderful scene. It really is. And I liked that in this version, everything that is supposedly happening to his hand is just left up to your imagination. And whereas the Lynch film, you actually see the hand, turning into a charcoal, right, and the skin peeling off, and all these things. And while it's kind of cool to watch, I think the letting you decide what he's experiencing in the box is infinitely, scarier and better than having their effects guys try and make something to show you.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I love that.
But amazing scene. And the movie could have used a little more Charlotte Rampling. I know she's in one other scene with the Baron, and I think Peter's in it as well. She should come back. She should come back later on.
She's like the right hand to the Emperor. She advises him on so much, and I think because of that, and we know the Emperor shows up in this episode, it'll it'll definitely we're definitely seeing her again.
I would hope so. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's an amazing scene. An amazing scene, and it really, the feel of how this movie is going to go is really revealed in that scene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love the line when because he very much identifies as his father's son and the lineage of the men in the Atreides family, but I love that the Reverend Mother has a moment to tell him in that scene where she says, "You have more than one birthright, boy." So she's almost, even though she's mad at Jessica for doing what she did, she recognizes that, Jessica has a line and it's a strong line, and he should know that it's not just the Atreides line, it's Jessica's line as well that flows through him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
great.
Yeah,
great
it's
line.
Amazing.
Did we get a chance to talk about the Gom Jabbar?
It's a pretty cool needle.
It's a pointy stick.
It's a pointy stick. That's right. I do love how she just, with it just kind of like a flick of her wrist, it's up at his neck. And and I mean, it is like right there. I mean, if he were to turn to look to his left, it would pierce him. I mean, literally, he can't move, or she'll stick him with it. And the description of it in the book as well as in the movies is basically you'd be dead before you hit the floor. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like the most powerful poison in the universe or something. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, and just what a cool name, the Gom Jabbar. So
it's great. I mean, it's great.
And I think I showed you last time. There is someone did like they did a little photoshopping and they made like a Lego or
like a Mattel, like an old Milton Bradley or Mattel game.
Yeah, like a play set, and it's the Gom Jabbar play set, and it's like, see if your friends are the one, and literally there's like a couple kids with the box and the needle, and they're going through it all. And it's hilarious, and I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it because it lives on the internet somewhere. So yeah, it's hilarious.
I had never seen it, and I Googled it right after Steve had said something, and it's very easy to see, and it's just it's amusing. Yes. Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's talk before we get into like a bunch of my next stuff is all Arrakis stuff. So let's talk our buddy Dave for a minute.
Dave Dismalchian. Yes.
I swear to God, I have reached out a couple of times and haven't gotten any response. I'd love to get a chance to chat with him. He is like, he's one of those guys that's working all the time. We're friends on Facebook because of, we worked with Dave on some theater things in Chicago years and years ago. And talented guy, sweet human being. And it's just like seeing the trajectory of his career has been so fun. From the sidelines, and we've brought him up before about stuff, when we were talking about Suicide Squad and things like that. It couldn't happen to like the nicest guy, the friendliest guy, and he's so down to earth, and he's so humbled by all of the sort of fame and fame adjacent things that are happening for him right now, and he just. It's great because I love that he kept his name and he didn't change anything about it, and it can be a mouthful, but a lot of people, like when I say Dave Dismalchian and they're like, huh? You show a picture, they're like, oh, that guy. Yes. That guy. He's great. He's great at everything he does. And he just has such a distinctive look, and the way he carries himself in all of his films, he's got such a great dedication to character and craft, and he's just such a joy. And we talked about this before. I really hope they do some flashbacks maybe in part 2, because got a very small amount of Dave in this movie.
Oh my God, do you? You blink, like
Yeah.
I said, you blink and you miss him, you know.
I know. I mean, there's some great scenes. He gets some great scenes, but they're so short. Damn it.
Oh yeah, it does. It's and I think one of the things that I was a little disappointed that they trimmed out, although it's completely minor in terms of the story, is that really the only thread that his character Peter DeVries has in the book is that he's like agreeing to go along with this plan with the Baron, not just because he works for the Baron, because if they get caught, they're all going to be executed, right? I mean, it's not like you can just plot the destruction of another house like this, like they're doing. But so he's going along with it and encouraging it because he wants Lady Jessica for himself. And they don't really say what he's going to do with her. It's kind of implied, but so much so that the Baron, basically tells him, you can have her and you can have your fun with her. But, after a while, I'm going to show up and say it's, fun's over. We kill her. And Peter's like, cool, let's do it. So again, what is it? I don't know. What was it? Was it, sexual? Was it mental? I don't know. But, whatever it is, he had designs on Lady Jessica and was totally jonesing to get her in his, evil little hand, little claws. And that whole subplot, at least in the first part, is excised out. It's never mentioned. It's never implied. It's, he's just doing the Baron's bidding pretty much. And the Barons decided that this is what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do, So so anyway, it's something that I enjoyed in the book, in the fact that it kind of gives a little more motivation into his character. But is it essential to telling the story of Dune? I don't think so. It's just something I would have liked to have seen them put in there. So yeah,
but here's hoping for a little more. Dave, we love you.
Yeah,
if you
we
ever
do.
hear this and we'd love to have you on the podcast and talk Chicago theater and the leap over to LA. It'd just be a wonderful chat. But until then, oh man, are we loving watching you in movies? It's been so much fun.
There's a movie that he did in 2023 that I believe it is just starting to come out. And if it's already out, I missed it. But it's called Late Night with the Devil. And, And he plays this like late night talk show host for like a very low, like a local, like cable access kind of show. It's not like he's, Jimmy Fallon, right? It's a smaller type show. And it's what happens. It's a horror movie, and it's kind of a horror comedy movie. And it's what happens when, the devil shows up as one, on the show, and hilarity ensues. Anyway, I've been hearing about it for a while. I think this is one of those movies that got caught in the COVID thing, in that it was actually completed a few years ago, and it's kind of, because of COVID, it kind of got shelved, and it took a while to find a distributor and all those kind of things. So it's now just coming out, and I'm super excited to see it because I've seen a trailer for it, and Dave looks amazing. He's the lead, which is great. And it looks like it's funny. It looks like it's a real fun, kind of a horror comedy, which is a rare beast. So anyway, it's called Late Night with the Devil, and it stars our very own Dave Dastmalchian. So if it's available, watch it.
Yes. I love it. Let's talk all things Arrakis. We jump into Arrakis, and there's so much. We talked about like the visuals and how it is such an alien, world compared to where we came from on Caladan. And right off the bat, like just even their mode of transportation, I love the ornithopters so much. And they look like dragonflies, and their wings beat. They don't, it's not like a helicopter where they fly around in a circle.
Right.
They literally beat like they are. Oh,
like their
it's
wings.
Amazing.
Yeah,
they're amazing. It's amazing.
And again, if that's what you're expecting your ornithopters to look like, and you've never seen the '84 Dune, you're gonna be disappointed. Because they're like boxes with these two wings. There's no imagination at all that like in the current movie. And I believe that one of the things that Denny did is he got with Frank Herbert's sons and his estate, who have since Frank Herbert passed away, and the sons have continued to write Dune books. There's now like, I don't know, 16 of them or something, some crazy number. But they have all of his Frank Herbert's notes and sketches and things. And so Denny went out of his way to incorporate as many of the things that Frank Herbert thought things should look like into the movie. And so these ornithopters are pretty much what Frank Herbert imagined when he wrote them, when he made them up, which is, I think, is really cool.
Yeah. Oh, so cool.
They are. They are.
Yeah, I love let's talk the spice harvester scene. So we're going at least a little bit in chronological order. Great scene. And more delving into the the psychology of this, like I said, this surrogate family that Leto has created, these people that would take a knife, take a bullet for each other, and they go off with Dr. Kynes to go check out the production of the spice. They want to get up close and personal, and it's this really great, very action-packed scene.
Oh boy!
Where
our first glimpse of a worm.
Yes, there's so much going on between they get their first worm sign, and actually it was Leto who saw it first, which is, I thought, was really great in the moment. And Dr. Kynes was very, congratulatory, good eye, good job spying it. And and then they follow their procedure. The harvester is supposed to just get, they're supposed to have a team that comes in and lifts them off, and they work all the way up until the last second. And there's a transport that attaches, pulls the harvester right out of the ground, and, brings them to a safe spot, and then they continue with their harvesting. But there's been some, there's a combination of things. The Harkonnens have sabotaged a lot of their stuff, and also they got left a bunch of crappy equipment. So there's a mixture of stuff. Things are falling apart on purpose because they've been booby-trapped or what have you, but they're also just falling apart because they have a lot of older modeled things, and that's what happens here.
And Dune is so harsh that equipment burns out very quickly anyway. So
exactly, just the harsh environment of the sand would do it. So the transporter comes in like it's supposed to, and one of its little legs that's supposed to attach to pick it up, it doesn't deploy, so it's not working properly. And they're trying to decide what to do. There's a transport that's too far away, it won't make it. They've only got like a few minutes before that worm is going to be on them. And there's really no way other than, they wouldn't have time to like go place a thumper somewhere to sort of make it go away, which would be their only other sort of defensive move that they could do. And so they decide to, evacuate the harvester. So you get this up close look at the harvester and how it works, and all of this because they all scatter to try and get all of these guys into their ornithopters to get them out of there. And just this great action-packed, energetic scene. Paul gets this really intoxicating moment with the spice where he inhales it, and he has kind of like a he
goes on a trip. That guy does.
He gets a little psychedelic moment there for Paul. It was like,
oh man, this spice is really groovy.
This air quotes spice that I have inhaled is very, very whoa. That's for sure.
You saw he was immediately looking around for a bag of Doritos.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know what kind of food you have on this planet, man, but are there any?
I'm like really hungry.
Twinkies? I'm really hungry all of a sudden.
And then I got to get back to my friends and solve the mystery with my talking dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
then all of a sudden Gurney turns into a dog and he goes, "Ruh-roh, let's get
let's get out of here. Come on, Raggy."
Yeah, Raggy. Let's go, Raggy. Oh man, fall apart. That's all it takes. So yeah, just the spice harvester scene, just a wonderful sort of action-packed scene. Really showed, like I said, these relationships again. This family that he's created, they're all risking themselves, and it's great because it's really one of the first times that Kynes also gets a glimpse into who these people are, because as soon as Lita was like, "Forget about the spice, man, save the
damn
people.
The spice," yeah,
and she is. What does that say about how harsh the Harkonnens were? That his first instinct is, well, forget about the material, forget about the spice or the harvester or any of this other shit. Get the people in here. And she's like, whoa, I like this Duke,
Yeah.
But it just shows a contrast, a really heavy contrast with the Harkonnens.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful moment, and it's a moment that in for me in the book that it sticks out in my mind, in that when and it's a little bit different too, because in the original writing, the carryall that malfunctions in the movie and the one leg doesn't attach, in the book the carryall is just gone. So it just
doesn't show, right?
It doesn't show up because like the guys flying it were loyal, like Harkonnen, traders that were left behind, and they just flew it somewhere else, like far away.
Isn't that how they played it for the Lynch one as well?
The Lynch one,
the harvester just doesn't show.
It just doesn't show up, and I don't remember if they explain. No. It's called the carryall, I think, in the story. But yeah, and you're right, it just never shows up, and so. Of course, the people on the harvester, they're still screwed one way or the other, because they're not going to get lifted away, and the worm's going to eat them. And so the Duke is like, basically asks how long would it take to get another ship, and like you said, there's not enough time. So he's like, well, we'll go in ourselves. And so then he puts the ornithopter into a steep dive to get down there to land. And he's like, we'll rescue them ourselves. And literally, Kynes, who's sitting next to him in the cockpit, is looking at him, and you just hear it. Again, it's a book. You're reading his thoughts, and his comment is, "I like this Duke." And he, again, like you said, this is so alien to the Harkonnen way. Where the lives are totally immaterial and expendable. The Harkonnens would do everything they could to save the spice.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
They don't. Who cares about the people? We get more people. And so and I believe in the Lynch movie, Max von Sydow plays Kynes, and you have his internal voice go, "I like this Duke."
Yeah. Yeah. More of the internal voice.
Yeah. And it's also a little telling because Kynes. And I don't know if at this point has been clued into what's going to happen, but you certainly get the sense that, is expecting what's going to happen. So Kynes already knows that almost all these people are probably going to die.
Yeah.
When the Harkonnens launch their trap. And of course, Kynes is the agent of the change that is supposedly this neutral person that the Emperor has sent to make sure that the change is smooth and that the Harkonnens aren't screwing over the Atreides and vice versa. And of course, once the invasion hits, the Emperor has basically ordered Kynes, you can't say anything about what you saw here at all. There's no Sardaukar, there was no traitor. It was just a straight up, military operation, and the Atreides lost. And that's all we're going to let out of here. And you can never say a word. So clearly, Kynes knows that the Duke's days are numbered, and it's almost like a bit of regret in that she really is like, oh my God, this guy is amazing and could really make the Fremen's lives much, much better, than what they've been accustomed to under the Harkonnens. And it's really too bad that, he's got like a week left and then he's going to be gone, so,
yeah.
But yeah, it's an amazing scene, and it's exciting. And of course you have the mystery of the worm, we know it's our first view of one we've never seen. What is it? What's it going to look like? And when it comes up and eats that that crawler, that miner, I mean, oh my gosh, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes it in one gulp, and you see all the teeth. And of course, we know from a previous scene that the Fremen make their crysknives out of the teeth of the worm, right? And so you see it. I mean, that thing's got to have 1,000 or 10,000 teeth. I mean, it's all teeth, right? I mean,
it's nothing but teeth. It's teeth incarnate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's like Jaws, right? It's all teeth,
right.
And it's amazing. It's a really incredible scene. And despite all the action that we just were talking about, and are they going to make it, and so on, at the same time, Paul is like literally having like a spiritual moment, an awakening going on during all of this chaos, and almost doesn't make it back, right? I mean, the Duke's ready to take off. And then suddenly Gurney's like, hey, you know what? Paul ain't here.
Yeah, your son's outside still. He's having some kind of trip.
I don't know what he's doing. He's looking for food though. But yeah. And so as you said, he had, Gurney has to run out and get him, and then the two of them make this mad scramble and like just barely get back on the ornithopter, which is already overloaded and can barely take off with all the weight of all these extra people they've added, from the crew of the sand miner. But yeah, it is an incredible scene, and it on so many levels. I mean, it's just an incredible scene in that it's exciting and it's action packed, and you get a little insight into Kynes. You get a little bit more into the Duke and how he treats his people and what kind of a ruler he is. And then you have Paul continuing on his journey of kind of self-awareness.
Yeah. Right.
Which is so prevalent in this film, and that it's literally, what do they say? The sleeper awakens, isn't that?
Sleeper has awakened. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what we're literally watching the sleeper, hit the snooze button a couple times here. Yeah. So it's, it's great. It's an incredible scene, and the effects are amazing.
Yeah. Agreed. I want to talk about the invasion a little bit.
Okay, we could talk about the invasion.
Let's talk about the invasion.
So, like, were you like pro invasion or like?
I was not pro invasion. Did it look great? And do the Sardaukar they feel like ninjas because they're so quiet, because they come in, they have like jetpacks. They're like Boba Fett. They come sort of like slowly like descending in, and it's so quiet. It's just an amazing scene. The way it all escalates, it starts with just, obviously Dr. Yui shoots those guards, and they were like the lookout, and just and it just cascades from there.
Yeah.
And just watching it.
He takes down the house shields, and he so the energy like basically everybody every individual person has like a personal shield generator that they wear either on their wrist or on their belt, and you hit a button and it like literally creates a force field around you that will deflect fast moving objects. So like a bullet or a laser can't penetrate you. A slow-moving object, like if you were to take a knife and push slowly, it can pass through the shield. That's kind of its weak point. And as they say on Arrakis, you can't use shields out in the desert because the vibration of the shield would drive a worm crazy, and it would kill it. It would kill itself attacking whatever was shielded, right?
Right.
And so they have what's called the house shield, which is like a massive energy shield that they put up around, the palace where the Duke lives and the family lives. And so one of the things that Yui does is he sabotages it so the shields come down, and then he also jams all the comms so they can't talk on the radios to each other. So basically leaving them wide open to get ambushed by this attack, right? Where they have nothing to protect them, and they can't talk to each other and raise the alarm, right? And so there's that scene where like somebody like goes and wakes up Gurney, who is, finished his shift and is turned in for the night, right? And it basically is like, sir, the shields are down, and that's when Gurney's like, uh-oh. And then everybody's like running, trying to get the ships up, and he can see, out of that spacing guild warp folder all of the Harkonnen ships coming out of it, right? And it looks like a big cannoli in space, right? And it is, right? It's a cannoli.
No, I know what you mean. Yes.
And these ships are already like coming down into orbit, so the invasion is already beginning. And then what does he say? Like, get everything with guns off the ground, and it's already too late. It's already too late. The ships are already blowing up, the bombs are hitting, and so on. And Yui, he starts it all by like sort of like opening the door. Mm-hmm. That allows the Harkonnens to get in there. But I agree with you. The Sardaukar are, I mean, they're in the book, they're, the way Frank Herbert describes them, they're like the universe's most deadly troops. They've never been defeated. They are, like one Sardaukar can kill like 100 regular guys. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. And they have a mystique about them because they're so terrifying. And you up against what does Duncan say? You cross blades with the Sardaukar, it.
Yes.
And so you're right. And the fact that we see them and they literally are like jumping out of these transports like airborne troops do in real life, but instead of having parachutes, they just have like these anti-grav or thrusters, and they just slowly and silently come to the ground. Right. I mean, it is a really, really cool visual to see them do that. And we get to see it a couple times in the movie. And they make very quick work out of those Atreides guys when we see them. And it's real funny. The Atreides are taking on the Harkonnens and are, holding their own and even winning. And then the Sardaukar descend silently behind them, and then the Atreides guys, they're all in a line, right, and they're all attacking in unison, like they're very well trained and disciplined. And suddenly one of them looks behind them, and they're like, Sardaukar, Sardaukar. Then they all turn around, and the Sardaukar come up, and I mean, the fight is over in like 5 seconds, and all the Atreides guys are dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no comparison, right? It's amazing.
And there's something to be said too for like that moment with Gurney when they're walking into battle and they're all have like swords.
Yeah, they have swords, right? Yeah.
So it's very like you just see the difference in the different and they are very adept at fighting. They're strong. They have strong will. They have strong tactics, but they have swords. And Sardaukar can like fly in. So it's like you see this difference between, the way one group fights and the way another does, and how quickly they are mismatched, and it doesn't have anything to do with how strong, those Atreides troops were, like strong-hearted. They had the heart of a lion. But it doesn't matter if you're, if someone lands on your back and, kills you that way.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just in general, one of the really interesting things that Frank Herbert comes up with in this universe is the weird levels of tech, in that they have interstellar travel, and they have personal energy shields, and those cool floating lights that follow you around and light up when you wake up, and all this really interesting. It's and like the way the spaceships land, right? They don't make any noise. When the Agent of the Change's ship lands, I mean, literally it lands. The Duke is standing there, and it lands like 30 feet away from him. Right. And there are no like big jets, thrusting out and blowing everything around or whatever. It's silent, and it just kind of descends to just above the ground, and then the landing gear come out and it lands. I mean, so it obviously amazing tech, yet all of the soldiers in this movie use swords. In this story, right? There are guns. We see some people using guns in various times, but it's not their weapon of choice. They all are armed with swords, and it's a really interesting setup. That Frank Herbert kind of went with this sort of throwback to the more medieval time or feudal times when there were these little fiefdoms of everybody had a duke or a baron, and they all had that their men-at-arms were armed with swords and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's a real interesting, just that in general, that level of tech just kind of really varies. And some things are super advanced, and yet other things, no, we're just going to use swords. We're good.
Yeah. So coming out of the invasion, we get a pairing that's going to be very important for probably the remainder of the film. It's been important leading up to it, and you just wrote it as Paul and Jessica, but it really is their sort of their flight away from danger, assisted by others, like we said, family, chosen family, etc. And then also Dr. Kynes, who helps out, because she admits, she's like, I am a Fremen, which means, if you say you're a Fremen and you identify with that tribe, she's insinuating that she has hate in her heart for the Harkonnens, because they have killed, unilaterally killed her people. So
it's funny, when you started that, I thought you were going to say the pairing was the Duke and his tooth, but either way it's good. I think they're both equal.
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of jumped over the tooth. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit of Paul and Jessica, and then we'll get back to that. But Paul and Jessica get away, like we said, with some love and some assistance, and they are going to be a pair. They're their only family really that they have left, other than chosen family. So they are all that's really going to be left of the Atreides bloodline. So it's an interesting pairing, because it's his mother, but also his mentor in the Bene Gesserit ways. And so, but you can see there's a strange tension with them in the beginning, because they don't know for sure that the Duke is gone. Then they sort of know that the Duke is gone. And so Paul's the Duke now, but he had that whole conversation on Caladan where it's like, what if this isn't what I want? And, and Leto's like, well, if it's not what you want, when the time comes, then I respect that, but know that when the time comes, you'll be ready.
Right.
And he, in this time where he's alone with Jessica until they come upon the Fremen, he is struggling with am I ready for this stuff? And she knows it. And it's like, it's a difficult, like, sort of balancing act. It's, do I encourage him? Do I teach him more things? Do I, and she ends up, and she's mourning herself. That's her, not her husband, but that's her baby daddy. That's right. That's her man, and he's gone. So there's a lot going on in the Paul and Jessica stuff, but it's such a great relationship that they've put together there.
Absolutely. That whole sequence on the Ornithopter when she's gagged, and of course they don't gag him because they think he's just a stupid kid.
Right. And they know she's the Bene Gesserit, and they don't know that he's been studying. Yeah. Right.
And I love the conversation where, the one guy's like, why don't we just kill them now? And the other guy's like, no, we're just going to throw them in the desert, because that way, if we ever go up against a truth seeker, like a mentat, someone that can probe our mind, right? And they ask us the question, did you kill them? We can honestly say, no, we did not kill them. We threw them out of the Ornithopter. They were alive, and technically they did kill them, but they didn't. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where they might be able to escape that if that would ever happen. And then the third guy, he's kind of just eyeballing Jessica, like, I've never been with a Bene Gesserit before, or a hybrid, or whatever.
Highborn lady, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's Rebecca Ferguson, so it's like, yeah, she's pretty adorable. I get it. So he's thinking, hey, let's have a little fun with the mom before we, send him off. And this, of course, pisses off Paul like it would any son. And so he decides he's going to use the voice. And we kind of got a little taste of that earlier in the movie when they're having breakfast at the very beginning, and he asks for some water, and Jessica's like, use the voice, and this is like a teaching moment, right? And you have to practice, and he doesn't get it right. He almost does, like her hand moves a little, but it doesn't work. And she even says almost, and then she points out that Bene Gesserit training takes years, and it's not something you just master right away, and so on. So now the stakes are much higher, obviously, and he's trying to get them to take off the mom's gag, and it's a great scene. They're using their sign language to kind of talk amongst themselves, and we find out that one of the three guys, the Harkonnen soldiers, is deaf, so the voice won't work on him, right? And so it's very intense because he tries it, and the guy that he tries it on just walks over and like punches him in the stomach really hard. That says like, shut up, like, will you stop? And then he does it again, and it works, and he takes off the mom's gag, and then those three guys are dead. Yeah. Right. Once mom can talk, it's over. And, you really see a physicality out of Jessica that you don't get in the Lynch movie.
Yes.
The portrayal of Jessica in the Lynch movie, she's much more like a regal lady. Yes. That doesn't really get her hands dirty very much. And this Jessica, it's Rebecca Ferguson. She's been in the Mission Impossible movies. So
she can kick ass.
She can. She can run just as fast as Tom Cruise can. And so she can do it. She can walk the walk, and they let her. And man, does she take those dudes out? Slicing throats. It's pretty vicious the way she kills them all. And or she kills two of them. She has one of them. She has the one guy kill the deaf guy. And it's so great because he just walks up to him, and the deaf guy turns to him like, what? And then he just slices his throat right at, it's great. Yeah, it's great. And then they also find that Dr. Yui has left them the little Frem kit with some stuff to kind of survive, including a little beacon, a radio that will emit a signal on an Atreides frequency. And he leaves in a written note. He basically says, if anybody from the Atreides side survives, they can find you, which turns out to be really important because Duncan, Idaho, Jason Momoa survives, and he does come upon them in the next morning, and they have this little reunion. But yeah, there's that great moment when Paul unwraps his father's ring. And I think that's when it really hits both of them that the Duke is dead, that he's no longer there. And especially then even more so when Duncan shows up and he comes running up to them and he hugs them, right? The first thing he does is he hugs both of them, okay? And this is a guy who works for you, right? But it just shows you the loyalty and the love that he has for this family. And then he says "Milady," and then he says "Paul," and then he sees the ring, and he literally goes down on his knees and pulls the ring up to his forehead and says, "My Duke." Yeah. Right. And this is the guy that, told Paul, I can't take you to Arrakis, kid. And, hey, are you putting on muscle? Nah, I'm just kidding. So he now suddenly it's my lord, It's a great sequence. It really is. But the bit with Paul and Jessica, because really after that scene, they're together for the rest of the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. When we talked about, visuals and things that were, art direction things, I loved the tent, because the tent itself was kind of like, like you said, it was more of like a Fremen kit, like a kit to be out in there. They didn't have the still suits yet. They get those later from Dr. Kynes, but the tent itself kind of acts like the still suit.
Yeah.
It shields them from the sand. It helps hide them a little bit, and it gathers the moisture from the air and from their bodies too. So they do still have a water source. But just, it was cool because it kind of like, it looked like alive, You know, it had like a movement to it. It's just very cool. So I want to make sure we
I love these. You see like the water like dripping like inside the layers of the tent.
Yes.
It's real cool.
Yeah.
And I also like when he turns on like a little light. I think when they get up in the morning and they're going to try and get out, and he turns the light on and you can see the spice kind of flickering in the air.
Yes.
You know, and it just helps remind you that, okay, they're not in Arakian anymore. They're not in one of the cities. They're out in the desert, and the spice is everywhere.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So we sort of jumped into the Paul and Jessica post battle stuff, but you did make a point. So let's make sure to jump back into in the midst of the actual battle happening, where the Harkonnens and the Sardaukar are fighting all of the Atreides forces at the palace. There's this great scene. I mean, the whole thing about the tooth is just great.
Mm-hmm.
It's this great revenge that Yui is able to have on the Harkonnens, and and just the scene itself when it is deployed, when the tooth is deployed, it's such a great moment, and it is instantaneous.
Oh,
you know, they literally just take one breath and they're out.
Yeah, some serious death gas there. Yeah. I mean it. Because I mean it wipes out. You know that the room that they're in is this massive meeting room. I mean it's got to have 30-foot high ceilings, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's got to be like 20, 25 guys in that room, and all of them except the Baron die.
Yes.
And like you said, they die in like a second. I mean, Peter DeVries hits the ground dead like 2 seconds after the gas is released. I mean, it's quick. It's awesome.
It moves quick, and what also moved quick was the guys that were the guards at the door recognized it immediately, and man, they reacted so fast, and they were like, nope, and shut the doors.
Yep, get the hell out of this room. That's the plan. Yep.
Yeah, think of how many more people would have died if they'd just been like, what's happening? And left the doors open.
Yeah. It's intense. It's amazing. Yeah. And again, this is also something that is not present in the movie that I wish they would have put in if I was putting together my Dune wish list thing, is the whole Yui backstory. And we get it that that the Harkonnens have his wife, and they're torture. He thinks that they're torturing her and killing her and then rebuilding her every day and then torturing her and ripping her apart again. And it's this horrible life they're subjecting her to. And what's her name? Wana, I think, is what he says her name is.
His wife.
And so they use his love for his wife to betray the Duke. And if you remember, and this, in that he has the little diamond tattoo on his forehead, and that is a symbol of this like training that he received, this imperial conditioning that once you get it, it basically means you can't betray the people that you are working for. You can't be bribed, you can't be forced or extorted. That conditioning is so intense that you'll be loyal. And so when the Atreides go to Arrakis, they know that it's not that the Harkonnens, they know the Harkonnens are going to try something, right? They know it's a trap, and the Harkonnens know that the Atreides know that it's a trap. And so clearly there's going to be a traitor that's going to show up. That's the most logical thing, that the Harkonnens have somehow got someone working inside the Atreides that's going to open the back door and let them in. And so it's kind of the hubris of the Duke that he thinks he can outsmart them and, avoid the trap and still get the prize, which is Arrakis and all the money from the spice that has him go there. But they're trying to figure out who the traitor is, and the reason why the Harkonnens are so confident their plan is going to work is because nobody's going to suspect Dr. Yui because he has the conditioning, and he literally theoretically cannot be broken, yet they've managed to break him. And all of that is gone. You never get any of that in the movie at all.
Yeah.
You just get the backstory about his wife. That's it.
Yeah.
But what's great too is that Yui, I mean, he hates himself for doing it, that he's betraying this family and this man, and it's killing him. But he also knows that, look, you know what? I'm dead. Like, there's no way that the Baron's going to let me live with this. And he's doing it just to get kind of like closure on his wife. He needs to know for sure if she's dead or if she's not.
Right.
And so he knows that the Baron's going to kill me, but I'm going to get my answer. And then, just as a little fu to the Baron, I'm going to set a trap in his trap. And he comes up with this crazy gas fake tooth. And in like literally in like 2 minutes before the Sardaukar show up, he rips out one of the Duke's teeth and puts this fake one in its place. And the Duke is all, he's drugged and is kind of drifting in and out of consciousness. And the last thing you get is the doctor saying, "Remember the tooth."
Yeah.
And it's so great because it's Dean Stockwell in the Lynch movie, and he's great. He's like, "Remember the tooth,"
Yeah.
But and so sure enough, when the death sequence happens, when he crushes the tooth, first of all, the Duke is completely naked, right, and vulnerable in this room, and the Baron is like.
I noticed that.
Did you notice that? Did you?
Naked.
Okay,
and I know it was a moment of absolute drama and sadness because he's gonna die, but Oscar's pretty. He pretty.
Yeah. The dude definitely goes to the gym. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he does.
And of course the Baron is like eating his food. And he's like, "You have a wonderful kitchen, cousin," and Skarsgård is just eating up the scenery as well as this food he's consuming. And then he comes over to kind of gloat right in the Duke's face and is like, "You know what? Your concubine's dead. Your son's dead. You've been defeated. Your line ends tonight. It's all over. Turn out the lights, all this stuff.
Give it up."
And then the Duke, again, remembers the tooth. And then he says very, 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 very quietly, he says something. What does he say? "Here I am, here I shall remain."
Yeah. Which
is kind of like the Atreides motto, if you will. And I know you pointed this out when we talked about the first time, that he starts talking and the Baron can't really hear him, and so he leans in close, which is the Duke's plan. But before he does it, what does he do?
He cracks the tooth.
No, the Baron turns on his shield.
Oh, he does. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Yes. And that's what saves him, really.
Yes. Yeah.
It slows the gas going anywhere near him.
Yeah, and he's able to kind of use his anti-gravity things to kind of go up to the ceiling and get away from it, right? And so he's screwed up, right? He almost dies, but he's like mostly dead.
He's mostly dead. Yeah, which means he's slightly alive.
Slightly alive, right? And he's not to Blythe like you would think. It's totally different. But and anyway, the whole sequence is great. And Oscar Isaac goes out and he doesn't quite get the Baron, but he gets a lot of other guys.
Yeah, he sure do. Yeah, it was it's surprising because like in the moment when in the Lynch version, it only kills the person directly in front of him.
Yes.
And it just kills Peter de Vries. He leans over and in his like state of like almost death, the Duke sees the Baron's face when really it's de Vries' face. Mm-hmm. And he, because he's hallucinating, and he chomps on the tooth and blows it right in de Vries' face.
Doesn't he?
And he falls. And then the Baron is like, am I still alive? Like, he knows that was meant for him.
Oh, yeah.
But in this version, it's far more deadly and kills all the people that are in the room. And like we said, he at that last second, he puts on his shield, smart man, and it's the thing that saved him. Yeah. And it's just it's interesting how it played out differently between the two movies. I like
But
scene in both of them is both interesting.
it is. Well, what's great in the Lynch movie is Brad Dourif plays Peter.
He does.
And the he kind of does this little scream when the gas blows in his face. He's like, ah! And then he dies. It's so great. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Much different. You kind of just see this mass death in the current film. And like you said, those two dudes close the doors, and as the two doors are closing, and we're seeing less and less and less of the room. The last thing you see is Peter fall to his knees and then slump over as he's dying, and then the doors are completely shut and we're closed and we're out of the room. And so it's a really, really well visualized sequence that you're like, yeah, all those guys are dead.
Yeah. So speaking of death, let's jump back into the timeline and the death of Duncan. He goes so quickly. I mean, we get more of him in this movie than we did in the other, and it's kind of sad because we attach ourselves to him a little bit more. And so when he goes with his hero's death, it really hits. And it's one of those moments. It's kind of like like the casting of say, like Drew Barrymore in Scream. They cast this, A-list actor in this role where, 5 minutes later, Drew Barrymore's dead.
Right.
In the beginning of the movie. So when they announced that Momoa was playing Duncan, I was like, oh, did they figure out some way for Duncan to not die? Because Duncan dies.
Yeah, they're rewriting.
He dies. My Lynch memory was like, he dies fairly quickly.
Yeah.
They have all these really great scenes where Paul is, bonding with him. And I'm like, this is just going to be that much more ugly when this happens. He has the vision of seeing him die, and all of that comes true. And just the scene itself was just so well put together. Again, more of the same. Family, taking care of family. This is chosen family. This is, folks that are part of their inner circle sacrificing themselves because Paul and Lady Jessica mean the world to them. And they know the Duke would do the same thing. They do what they know the Duke would do. Yeah. And that's what he does. Does he fight. It's never really close, but he's such a fierce fighter. You have a lot of, even though he's gonna die.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I'm like, he could make it.
Well, he only got stabbed completely through the chest once.
Right. That's just a flesh wound for someone with such well-developed pecs. It just went through a lot of muscle, is what it did. True. It didn't even hit any organs.
It's like a shoulder wound in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you're fine. What are you talking about?
I mean, Daryl survived a knife to the femur. That's
true.
Duncan's fine.
He's going to be good. He's going to be totally good. Yeah. You almost wonder if, they did that casting. Not that Jason Momoa isn't great as Duncan. He is. He's great. He's really good at it. But you have to think there's an element of there's a big chunk of the movie-going audience that has never read or seen Dune before, so they don't
they're like,
know the story.
Jason Momoa. Yeah,
and so you put Jason Momoa in an action movie. Jason Momoa doesn't die. He's freaking Aquaman. It's like, of course he's gonna make it, and they are kind of up till that point setting up this idea that, okay, you know what, Paul and Jessica, now they have Duncan. They, the three of them are now going to go and find Stilgar, and they're going to, plan the next, how are they going to get back at the Harkonnens and all of this. And now you have Paul as the Duke, and you're going to have Duncan as his right hand. Right. As his lieutenant, that's going to help him, do all the stuff he needs to do. And it just makes him dying that much more shocking. Like you said with Drew Barrymore, it's like casting Janet Leigh in Psycho and giving her top billing, and 12 minutes into the movie, she's dead. You're like, huh? Wait a minute, and all the setup of that movie about her stealing the money is completely irrelevant to what the story's about, and it's the same kind of shock value, I think, that they got with Jason Momoa. But yeah, that whole sequence when that Liet is talking to Paul and Jessica about, will you go to the Landestrat and testify what you saw here? And she says, I can't, I'm forbidden. And then Paul kind of comes up with this, you know what, I could marry one of the Emperor's daughters because he doesn't have any sons, and I could become the Emperor, and then I could turn Dune into a paradise and let the water out, and so it would be a planet of life and not sand, and is trying to like use that to impress. And all this is going on, and meanwhile Duncan is kind of out playing with a little beetle in the sand away from them, and he hears the noise coming from the other room, and they kind of all do because they all stop and look, and then he goes and he opens the door, and of course there's like one Fremen guy left, and he gets killed by the Sardaukar. And it's like we said last time, at that moment, Duncan could just lock the door and run up to Paul, and they could try and get away.
Right.
But that's clearly an option. That it's like, okay, lock the door. That'll take them a few minutes to get through that, and hopefully we have a way out of here and we can escape. But he doesn't. He doesn't do that. He instead, like you said, he knows that, look, Lady Jessica and Paul are what's important. Yes. They have to survive. I have to do everything I can to allow them to survive. And if that means I have to go take on as many Sardaukar as I can, that's what I'm going to do. And I mean, wow, yes. What a choice, right? Would you be able to do that like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I think I might just lock the door. I might just do that, Yeah. But you get that great moment when he turns and he hits the door button so it's closing, and he pulls out his knife and touches his head and his heart, right, with like the Atreides salute, and Paul knows immediately, like, he's screaming, Duncan, no, because he figured, he's gonna sacrifice himself, right, and it is, it's a heroic scene. It's got some great fights in it, as Duncan seemingly comes back from the dead, like the slasher in a horror movie, because they think he's dead, and then he gets up and kills a couple more of them, and all of that, but it allows them to get away and continue on. But yeah, it's an amazing sequence in the whole movie, and certainly one of the more gut punching ones. Right. Yeah. Because like you said, it's Jason Momoa, and we love him, and he's great, and he's funny in this movie. And how can they don't kill Jason Momoa? He doesn't die, Yeah. And then he's dead.
Yeah. And there he goes.
And then he's dead.
Yeah. And by that token, they are sort of spirited out. Dr. Kynes is like, you go down this way. There's an ornithopter down there. You can take it and go. I'll go this way, lead them away. And so
the ornithopter only holds two, so she doesn't have a choice. So she's like, you go
they're
that
like,
way.
come with us. And he's like, nope, it only holds two. You go. I'll lead them away. So she goes away, and she emerges out onto the sand. And she, if you've, if you're well versed, you know exactly what she's planning on doing.
Oh yeah.
She sets a thumper. She's calling a worm on purpose, and then she takes out the spikes. And you're like, she's gonna ride the worm. She's gonna ride the worm.
Yeah.
But then, because of the thumper and the noise and everything associated, and they do move very quietly, she doesn't even hear the Sardaukar come up behind her and just completely skewer her from behind.
Runs her through. Yeah.
But what I thought was fantastic was, in that moment, she knew, I'm dead, but I can take a few of them out with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so she continues to she continues to call the worm to them by pounding the ground and make sure that it comes. And there's just this sense, this look of peace on her face when she knows that she's beaten these two. She'll die too, but she's going to take them out. And as she's feeling this moment of joy, there's this sort of telltale look, like as the worm is getting close, there's all this hard packed sand from the wind, and it starts to release it because it's coming close to the surface. So all the movement sort of moves the sand around, so it gets kind of like soft and porous. And then, and the Sardaukar are starting to sink a little, and they're like, what's happening? And they can't quite get out. And you're like, you know what's about to happen, and you're like, you're about to be worm lunch is basically what's happening. That through, and it's just, I think Dr. Kynes is a great character, but I love the way that they let her have such a heroic end. In the Lynch version, all they do is they tear out all of the water pockets of his still suit, and
drop him off in the desert somewhere.
Yeah, they're like, go put him into his desert and see if he can make it, basically. And in the same treatment that they were going to give Paula Jessica in this movie, which is, we didn't kill Dr. Kynes. We didn't do that. We sent him back to the desert. That's all. If he died, that's his own fault.
Yeah, and actually that's faithful to the book. That's what the Harkonnens do in the book. And there's a scene later on. They go back. Frank Herbert goes back to Kynes in the book, and he's like wandering around, and he's delirious from heat exhaustion, and like literally like just about to die. And I don't know, he either sees an ornithopter or somehow he sees something related to what's going on, and he kind of has this weird thought about, Paul's the one or whatever. But that the sort of, we're going to take away his ability to survive and then throw him out in the desert. That is from the book. And I agree. I like the fact that they gave this Kynes a more, heroic, death that allowed her to sort of, there's that moment when after they stab her, and she's like on the ground, one of the Sardaukar says, you've betrayed your emperor. And she says, I have one master, and his name is Shia Halud, which is what they refer to the worms are. Yeah. And then she starts pounding on the sand. And again, it's this great moment. And like you said, once it's almost like a train's coming, because everything starts, or like an earthquake, because the sand starts shaking, and like you said, the Sardaukar, they start sinking into it, and it only goes up to like their ankles initially, but they are freaking out, like, what the hell is going on? And you're right, she just kind of lays back on the sand, and she's got this kind of like you said, this like grin. Yeah. And granted, I mean, she was just run through by like a 2-foot sword. So, she's probably dead. You know what I mean? Like literally just died from it, or going into shock or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of like it's like this knowing look of like, yeah, you know what? You killed me, but guess what? I killed you, and basically. And it's wonderful.
It's great too, because I think it comes just short of a hero's death, to be fair, because she doesn't take out a ton of them. It's a small amount, but they give her a death with purpose. I think in the other version, Kynes is just let loose in the desert, and it's a purposeless death. There's nothing gained or whatever. There's just cruelty to it. And there was cruelty to her death as well, but the fact that the rest of it, they killed her with the sword, but she chose which way her final passage would be. And it was in honoring, her people, and basically their religion, and it had more purpose to it, I think.
Yeah, you could say they killed her with the sword, and she killed them with desert power.
Yeah. Desert power.
Yeah,
I love
it. Which is a theme that runs throughout this movie. Why is one of the reasons the Duke wants to go to Arrakis is he believes that the Fremen, they're the key. That if he can get them to be allies, if he can win them over, and then Duncan and Gurney can train them. They're already renowned, fierce fighters, right? The Harkonnens hate them. Right. And so on, that he thinks that's the key. And so desert power kind of runs throughout this in different forms, and that we see the Fremen, and now we see the worms, and then you have the spice,
Yeah.
You know, so it's like 3 ways. But yeah, so that after that, then Paul and Jessica get away and they fly into the storm, right, to avoid the guys that are chasing them. And there's some wonderful kind of hallucination dream sequences with Jamis.
Yep.
That happen here where we're kind of introduced to Jamis and he's like an ally and almost like a friend to Paul.
Yeah.
Where he's like, the mystery of life isn't a destination to reach. It's taking the journey. Yeah. And then he's like, come with me and I will show you and I will teach you the ways of the death. And so you're seeing this guy and he's clearly a Fremen. He's got the blue eyes and he's wearing the still suit and everything. But you're like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? Because we've never seen him before. Yet he's clearly in the visions Paul's having. He's someone that, is trusted and close to Paul because he's telling him these very important things about how he's going to help him and so on.
Right.
And they survive the storm and the ornithopter ends up crashing. And so then it's Paul and Jessica alone in the desert and they do the crazy, what do they call it? The Fremen walk.
Yeah, it's like a dance or whatever.
Yeah, where you have to walk without rhythm so you don't attract a worm, and they're trying to get across the desert to these rocks where they think there might be a Fremen outpost, and of course they come across Stilgar again, and we didn't talk about it, but Stilgar is introduced earlier in the movie, and he's played by Javier Bardem. Yeah. And he's great.
Of course,
in it, and he's sort of like the leader of this what do they call it? Stitch? Is that what Sitch Tabor? Is that what they call
Siege.
it? Yeah.
It's the Siege. Yeah. It's like their own little grouping, like a clan, as it were.
Yeah. Right. And he's like the leader of that particular one. And so he meets them and he's got a whole bunch of Fremen there. And it's so great because we get the sign language right between Jessica and Paul, because Paul looks around and suddenly realizes the Fremen are there and he signals like, we're not alone. And they come up with this plan that, Paul's going to like run for higher ground because he has a pistol on him. And she's going to kind of hold her ground down there. And so Stilgar comes up to her and thinks he's like, easy woman, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to, don't make this hard. And she just gets the knife out of his hand and around his throat. Like, it's amazing. She just, boom, suddenly he's like, whoa. Whoa.
I didn't play this correctly. It's going through his face. Yeah.
Can we start over?
I'd like to try this. Can we just one more time, please? Thank you.
I would like to phone a friend. Yeah, it's and of course now we finally meet Zendaya. She shows up as we see her at the very beginning. We hear her. She kind of does a little narration at the beginning, but we don't see her again until the very end, which is, I think, was one of the more hilarious things about the original movie, in that, Zendaya is in all the marketing for this movie, and you think, wow, she must be in it a lot. No, she is not.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah. And anyway, so and of course, Paul's been having dreams about her, and I can understand that. I mean, who wouldn't?
Yes.
But so for him to actually meet her must have been jarring, right? But there's a wonderful little moment of humor that crops up when Jessica is holding Stilgar with his knife at her throat. And he's like, whoa. He's like, why didn't you tell me that you were of the weirding way, which is their way of saying, that either she's a Bene Gesserit or that she's combat trained. I'm not 100%, but basically that you're more than, meets the eye. And she's so great because she's eyeballing all these Fremen that are kind of around her, kind of watching what's going to happen. And she's like, our conversation ran short. And again, it's a funny little line. It's right in the middle of this very tense moment, and I think didn't Stilgar say that, like, well, we could take the kid with us because he's still young enough, we can teach him, but nah, the woman isn't going to make it. We're going to kill her. right?
Yeah, she's not
And
worthwhile. Yeah.
yeah, and then she turns the tables and bests him, and so then he's like, all right, fine, we'll take both of you. And that's when Jamis steps forward and basically is like, no, 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 I don't think so. She bested you, which, if the way their culture works, if you get bested, like, you're the leader and you get bested, whoever bested you is now the leader. So how does that work? Is she in charge? And he demands satisfaction, and he's like, we have to kill her. And then Stilgar's like, no, you can't fight her. She would have to have a champion. And he's like, Jamis is like, okay, fine. Who's her champion? And then, of course, Paul's like, well, shoot, I guess that's me.
Well, darn it.
Right. And that sets the stage for this like duel between Jamis and Paul, which, again, in flashbacks earlier, we see them fighting, and we actually see Jamis kill Paul.
Yeah.
Paul has already foreseen his death, which, again, is a real interesting choice by the filmmaker, because almost all of the visions that Paul's had in the movie have all come true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now we have that one too. And now you're like, wow, this is going to be a weird movie if they kill Paul Atreides. Right.
Yeah. I feel like there won't be a part 2.
No, it won't happen. And, and so anyway, they Johnny gives Paul the knife that he'd been dreaming about, and basically says, here, you can hold this while Jamis kills you, and it'll be a really cool thing.
Yeah. Because it'll be an honor for you to die holding this knife.
This thing. Yeah. And it's so funny because none of the Fremen give him a chance in hell of winning, and basically they're like, you know what? He'll be quick with you. You shouldn't suffer too much. That's the thing you can look forward to here, And so then they go, and again we get that great moment where Paul does the Atreides salute.
Yep.
Before he begins, and he almost immediately gets an advantage where he could kill Jamis, but he doesn't, and he's like, "Do you yield?" Yeah. And that's when Stilgar kind of drops the bomb of, "Oh yeah, this is to the death."
Yeah, sorry, we forgot to tell you that part.
Yeah, so sorry. And then when he continually gets the advantage of Jamis, Stilgar turns to Jessica and is like, is he just like playing with him? Like, why is this happening? And then Jessica drops another truth bomb on everybody.
Yeah.
Which is?
Oh, I forget.
Oh, that wow. You should have rewatched this movie.
Yeah, maybe.
That Paul's never killed anybody.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what's her truth bomb? In my head, I was like, wait, she say something about him knowing the way? Does she say that? No. I'm like, oh my God, what a dope. Yes. Yeah. He hasn't killed anyone before.
And that's why he's reluctant to, put the death blow in, right? And he keeps trying to get Jamis to say, okay, you win, and of course, unfortunately, that's not the rules. And so then Paul ultimately does kill him. And then that gives them acceptance into Stilgar's clan. Yes.
Yeah.
And that sets up, that amazing ending of the movie.
Yeah. It's just this great, this great course of events. They're done with the battle. They have this moment. Nobody can believe that he won. He can't believe that he won. Mm-hmm. And it's just the transition that he has to take from, he see this man in his dreams. Then when he realizes, oh my God, this isn't a yield battle. This is I have to kill him. And my very first act as wanting to become a part of these Fremen people is I need to kill one of them. Like it's the worst hazing ever. But then not right after that scene, they wrap up Jamis to take him home with them, to take him back to their siege. And they wrap him up and everyone is carrying him and they're walking along and they have this really great moment where they're walking and you look off to the side and you see what we were just talking about with Dr. Kynes with the hooks. You see one of the Fremen literally riding on the back of a worm.
It's awesome.
I know, it's so great. I can't wait to see more of that in the next movie. And they're riding on the back of the worm. They've never seen anything like it before. There's all of the studying and the learning they've done about the Fremen. This is the first time they've known about something like that. And I'm curious, I wonder if Duncan ever saw it and maybe he just didn't have a chance to tell them about it. I feel like because
that's a good question.
Because since the Duke was all about harnessing, air quotes, desert power, I feel like if they had entrusted Duncan with seeing that, he would have said something about it. They would have known. Yeah. And I just wonder, I think they might have kept that silent. I mean, that's their Duncan. Duncan is this great guy, and they liked him, and he was a warrior, but he's also a warrior for this Duke that we don't know who he is yet. Yeah. Don't know what all these people are. We're not going to
outworlder.
Yeah, we're not going to give away our most important feature right off the bat.
Yeah.
Paul and Jessica no one has ever spoken of this as being part of the Fremen culture. Right. And they are absolutely gobsmacked. They can't believe what they're seeing. And when they look at it, they look at each other and they both have the same thought. And Jessica looks at Paul and says, desert power. Mm-hmm. And they finally sort of understand how they can make Duke's dreams become a reality. It's right in front of them. It's literally power that comes from the desert. And Fremen are the only ones that know how to use this. Right. And in that moment, Chani sees them stopped, sees them reacting to this. And she says to them, this is only the beginning. And they continue walking. And there's this great little moment where the camera just is right on Paul, and he's looking down as he's walking, and he kind of looks up a little, and there's just the slightest grin on Paul's face. And there's a lot in that moment. There's, Chani is the one that says this is only the beginning, and he's kind of like, yeah, I kind of know. I've been seeing scenes of this for months and months now. So if you think it's only the beginning, you should see what's in my head. But the fact that this is just the beginning with the Fremen, with the desert power, with the things that they were just talking about, but also on a personal level, he has seen so many visions of Chani being someone who's important in his life. So for her to say this is only the beginning, he's like, girl, you have no idea. Like, just wait, Yeah. So just it's such a great little moment, and I love that it's literally the end. It's literally the end of the movie. Yeah. But it says this is only the beginning. Yeah. And when she says that and it went to black, I was like, oh God, please do a part 2. Please do a part 2. Please do a part 2.
Right. Oh yeah. You're like,
because none of that was set until it had opened and blah blah blah. Like, we know Denis had been writing it and he was ready for it. And they had sort of tentatively said yeah, but there'd been no confirmation of it. No. So it was like, well, and they can't just leave it like this.
When you and I both saw it in the theater, when the opening credit happens and it said Dune, it just said Dune.
Yes.
And then by the time it got on to streaming, when you watch the opening credits, it says Dune Part 1. So yeah, you're right. When they released when the movie was released in theaters, they had not greenlighted the sequel yet. They were like, probably let's see how it does. It does. Is this one going to make us money? And if it does, then we'll go ahead and continue. So but that's definitely a thing. And I again, the ending is great, and it's a great little pun, a little double meaning line that this is only the beginning, saying, you know what, this is not the end of this story for you or the audience, that there is more coming that is going to blow your shirt. That you're gonna lose your shirt over when you see what's coming. So it's great. Exactly. It's so great. And I agree with you. I don't believe the Fremen would have told Duncan or let Duncan witness that. I think Duncan was an outsider. He won their respect.
Yes.
By being a good fighter and a man of loyalty, and kind of similar qualities to what the Fremen do and how they operate, but still an outsider. And like you said, they don't know what this new group coming in is going to be like. They could be worse than the Harkonnens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I agree. I think the two of them seeing that person riding the worm, that's probably one of the few Outworlders that have ever seen that,
Yeah, exactly. Before we move on, I think we did. I mean, we jumped around a little bit because I'm a ding dong and can't remember how to read things in order. But I think we covered all of our personal moments. Is there anything that we didn't really touch on heavily that you want to make sure we hit?
I don't think so. I mean, I think again,
either.
the big moments, that we kind of covered, the Gomj bar, the harvester sequence, the invasion and the tooth, and then Paul and Jessica's journey, which involved Duncan Idaho dying and the duel with Jamis. I think those are the main beats of the movie.
Yes.
Anything else that we could just talk to death are just little moments that just, as Dune fans, just, made us giggle like schoolgirls.
Yeah, it just goes to show how well put together this movie was, that we really only talked about, like you said, like a handful of moments, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much more that happened in the movie, and all great. But we had to sort of keep it, and we've been talking for like forever, but we could keep going. I could keep talking about this movie.
Hey, I mean, we did not mention Thufir Hawat at all.
Nope. We didn't talk about Shout Out Mapes or any of her scenes or any of that. I mean, there's so much we did not cover. Right. But we'll have
or Rabin.
Yeah, we didn't talk about him at all.
We didn't talk about Dave Bautista. He's great in this movie.
He's really great. He really is. It's been great watching his journey as an actor too, like getting to these great parts. And he was in that last Knives Out movie, and he was so good in that. And just like he's really sort of become like a special kind of actor. He just and he was perfect in this role. So good in this role.
Well, and again, I would point out he is in Blade Runner 2049. So Denny worked with him before, and also Dave Dastmalchian in Prisoners, right?
Yep.
So worked with him. So again, you see this, all of Villeneuve's like film work up to this point was kind of preparing him for this movie, and that he was introduced to various actors that he's like, you know what, Bautista, he would be freaking awesome as the Beast, as Rabin, and Dave Dastmalchian. And I've heard an interview with Dave. He was on another podcast with a Chicago guy that reviews movies and stuff, and he told the story. They're both Dune junkies and love Dune before this movie, and he said that Denny called him up and said, "Hey man, how'd you like to be in Dune?" And he's like, "Yeah," and basically he offered him the part. So it was not an audition. It was not a, come on in and read. It's like, no, I want you to be Peter, so pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But no, I mean, we could keep going, but I think we've already talked it to death. We're past 2.5 hours already, so I think most people are already at work and want to go in and start their day. So
yeah, exactly. Sorry guys, you got to stay in the parking lot while we keep chatting. Ordinarily we would take a break and go to the bathroom, have a drink of water, and then dive into feedback, etc. But we didn't get any feedback, which I don't think has anything to do with people's enjoyment of the film. It just they didn't have time or didn't get it to us. So we didn't get any feedback. So we're just gonna not take a break, and we're gonna plow through and talk about what's coming up next on the podcast, and then wrap it up. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's this show out, and literally it's in less than a week. And it's the return. It's the return of Rick Grimes. Rick Grimes
and Michonne.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm excited to see Michonne too. I'm very excited. Michonne is one of my favorite characters, so I'm.
Oh come on!
I'm very excited.
We're both jonesing to see Terry O'Quinn. I mean, that's the draw.
I mean, that's going to be exciting to see.
It's Locke, for gosh sake! It's Locke.
I know. You can't tell me what to do. So The Ones Who Live clearly is what we're talking about. And as we record this, we're less than a week out. And I haven't gotten any solid confirmation about episode droppage on the app. There's word on the street that it'll be available on the app first thing in the morning on Sunday, but that's the only indication, and that's just sort of anecdotal. I reached out to a Twitter pal who is also falls under the press sort of distinction, and she usually has her finger on the pulse of press releases and things that are happening a little bit ahead of time. So if I have a question, it's the only thing I usually ever want to know about. I'm like, do you know if we're going to get this on the app earlier? She said she had heard that Sunday morning, but not confirmed yet, and nothing further than that. So, but just wanted to say, I know there's tons and tons of promos that are out there that I haven't watched a single one of. Thank you very much. I literally was watching the Super Bowl live and was not forwarding or going back and forth. And I literally was like, la, 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 when it came on during the Super Bowl. But there's also, now that we're in the less than a week away thing, just be careful, folks. I've heard there's lots of spoilers out there. There's lots of spoiler pictures, spoiler stories, because episodes were released to the press to be able to review, and that's always a pipeline for things to be
spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so be careful out there. Don't I just saw online that it's basically people who are using the hashtag of the ones who live. So don't click on the hashtags for the name of the show, because that's going to just bring you right down that spiral. But just giving you some fair warning. I'm super excited, and I still kind of hope that sometime between now and Sunday I'll have a chance to watch at least the final episode of World Beyond, because I want to kind of bone myself up back again on some CRM stuff. And I would recommend that to others if you haven't watched World Beyond. It really sort of sets the groundwork for that universe, so you can sort of align it with where we're going to see Rick for sure.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. So excited for that. So that's what we'll be covering next week. We'll send out, the usual, we'll ask for feedback. So please, please, please tell us what you think of the premiere of The Ones Who Live. Also, the True Detective finale was just last night. Was it last night? Oh my God, yes. 2 nights ago. I'm so sorry. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I've been traveling. I have not seen it yet, so it's something I have yet to watch. But
have you been enjoying the series so far?
Oh God, yeah, it's amazing. Okay. So many Easter eggs, so many references to John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah,
it's been really groovy. I love the connection to the first series with the spiral pattern. Right. And so, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's amazing. I mean, Jodie Foster is so good in this, as well as our old pal from Deadwood, Mr. Starr.
John Hawkes.
John Hawkes is really. I mean, the whole cast is great, but I was really, when he first showed up, I'm like, hey, cool, it's Starr, So that was pretty sweet. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Like I said, I was away for the weekend. I went to a big Doctor Who convention in Los Angeles called Gallifrey One.
Did.
And did not get back until yesterday, which would be Monday afternoon. So I was unavailable to watch the latest installment of True Detective. So, but I had a great time at the show. I got to meet Billy Piper and Alex Kingston, who I'm sure you remember from ER.
Oh God, yes.
As Dr. Corday. And so that was kind of fun seeing her. I met Eric Roberts. He was really cool dude, and met this renowned British Shakespearean actor who has actually been knighted by the Queen, Sir Derek Jacobi. and he was goofy and silly and fun and great. And so yeah, it was a really fun show. The Doctor Who culture is very, very similar to the horror culture we've experienced at the horror shows. They're very inviting and friendly and welcoming, and at those shows they'd go an extra step in that people actually you have a badge you wear around a lanyard around your neck to get into the show and stuff. And people there, they have these custom made ribbons that have a sticky part you peel off that you can attach under the back of the badge, and then every other ribbon goes at the base of the ribbon preceding it. So you have a real long line of ribbons running down your badge to the floor. And I mean, some people build little toilet paper rollers to hold their excess. And so for the first time this year, I actually made up a ribbon, and they usually have like a Doctor Who slogan or something on there, or a line from a show, or something that's funny or clever or whatever you're into, and you trade them. You walk around and trade them, and it's a way to meet people. It's a way to meet more of the fans. And this is the first time I ever went with ribbons, and I came away with about 60 of them. Different
Holy crap.
Which, and I mean, that's nothing. I mean, like, some people come away with, 300-400 of them. I mean, it's insane, but it was a lot, and it was super fun. And the creativity was adorable to see and fun. And, that's really cool, or that's really funny, or whatever. And it was really neat. Wonderful show. It's held in Los Angeles every year about this time. This was the 34th year that they had held it, so yeah, it's been around for a while. So good times. Yeah.
That's awesome. We are planning in, where are we now, about a month out. We're about a month out from the next Days of the Dead here in Chicago. That's going to be the weekend of March 22nd through the 24th. Good guests so far. We're pretty excited about that. Days of Dead is always a fun one to go to. And it's been a few. I mean, yes, you just went to Galley, but it's been a few months since I've been to a con, so I'm pretty excited to.
I think the last show you went to was Days of the Dead in November. So yeah,
I think you are
right.
That's right. Yeah, so we'll be excited about going to that. I love the panels, Summer always does such a great job with the panels. I'm looking forward to that. And, seeing our peeps.
Seeing our peeps and possibly doing some shopping and, having some good food and just good laughs. So it's going to be fun.
It'll be fun. Really good time.
And a Hellraiser 2 cast reunion featuring Claire Higgins. I'm super excited because she is a boss, and I cannot wait to meet her.
Clive Barker's going to be there too, right?
I believe he is as well.
Yeah. So if you're interested and you're in the Chicago area, it's a great little convention. We have so much fun every time we go. So check it out and let us know if you're going to be there. We'd love to say high fives and fist bumps and all that good stuff.
We'll hook up, and we'll be easy to spot because we'll be the two that'll be wearing horror themed T-shirts. So.
Yeah, very very easy to find, and I'll be wearing my black one, the horror themed T-shirt that's black. That's right. So. Yep.
And you'll have your shining bag, which I'm sure no one else will have. So you'll have.
That's true. That's true. That is definitely the thing that will help people find me.
Exactly.
This girl walking around the con floor that's wearing has the bag over her shoulder. That's the pattern of the shining floor. That's me.
Yeah. That's her. That's deep.
So I think we've kind of stuck a fork in it, and we've covered everything we need to cover. So I think that's it. I think we're gonna wrap it up. All right.
I think the only thing I would add in finality is that Dune Part 2 opens, I believe, on the 25th, which is like this Friday.
Yep.
And a reviewer in Chicago that I follow went to see it today at a screening, and I saw he posted about an hour ago that he said something like his quote was, "With the exception of Furiosa, which is the sequel to Mad Max Fury Road."
Yep.
Where Anna Taylor-Joy she's replacing Charlize Theron as Furiosa, but it's going to be a Road Warrior movie. He said, with the exception of that, Dune Part 2 is without a doubt the best movie of the year. So that, and again, I don't think he can go into more specifics yet because there's probably an embargo until Friday, but still,
I'm sure
he's a huge Dune nerd and loves it. So for him to be going, God, if it would have sucked, he would have said it. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be like, no, it's great. No, so that makes me that much more excited to go see it. So yeah.
Exciting stuff.
I know.
I know. I can't wait. All right. So that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Thanks so much for following along and listening to this gargantuan 3-hour podcast. We're very excited that you would even think about doing that. You guys are great. We look forward to talking to you again next week. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm the Quadzich Haderach.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots, they just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and the Kwisatz Haderach.
Wait, before we do that, I gotta turn off my fish tanks. We gotta start over.
There's our B-roll.